Hello, everyone. So we're back on our agenda. Item number 24, again, is to discuss priority housing sites for the years 2023 through 2031 housing element update. Our presenter this evening is Luke Connolly, a senior planner with the city of Cupertino in the Community Development Department. And so welcome, Luke. Please take this presentation away.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Paul and members of the City Council. I'm Luke Connolly, Senior Planner, who is managing the housing element update for the city. I know there's going to be a lot of material presented tonight. This is a fairly complex project, and it's been 5 months since there's been a housing element item on a City Council agenda back in March. So I'm going to try to give an overview before we really get into the core of the presentation, which will be looking at individual properties on a neighborhood basis, looking at each site within the city special areas and neighborhoods. And to do that this evening, I have Andy Flower, principal with EMC Planning, and David Massington, a principal at ELS Architecture. I want to talk for a few minutes because we're going to be getting into some terms that people will be familiar with. We'll be seeing these on the Zoom presentation, but I just wanted to go over some things before we jump into the sites and the discussion that Andy will be leading. For those people who haven't been following this project, the housing element update is something that occurs every 8 years. The housing element is part of the city's general plan, and it's the only element that the state mandates to be updated on a frequency of 8 years. The major component that people are familiar with when the update process begins, and one that we'll be talking tonight and is referenced in the staff report, is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, which is essentially a way of the state, through the Housing and Community Development Department, identifying what your city's housing needs are for the planning period for the 8-year cycle, which in this case is 2023 to 2031. The city's RHNA, for those who aren't aware, went up considerably from the last time, as has happened with all cities throughout California. The RHNA is 4,588 units. So when we talk about the sites inventory tonight, essentially what we're doing is trying to find the properties and the densities to accommodate that RHNA number. And we will be looking at that. There was an attachment A in the staff report, which is called the recommended sites inventory. That's essentially what's identifying the sites we're looking at that would accommodate that RHNA and then some. Another reason the sites inventory is a key element to get approved. It's quite a bit to take on, but it is the main thing that we need to get approved in order to start our environmental review or CEQA process. We need to know what properties we're looking at and how many housing units could be added within the 8 years in order to analyze what that means for the city. So that's something to keep in mind as we look at the timeline for this project. Since late January 25, specifically, staff and EMC has had 6 meetings with the Planning Commission. The latter 2 of those were joint meetings with the Housing Commission on June 28 and July 5, which is what resulted in the recommended sites inventory we have before us tonight, again, which is attachment A of the staff report for people that may be following along. On that recommended sites inventory, I just want to clarify some terms that are going to be used frequently. We have what are called pipeline projects. These are simply projects that have approvals or are far along in the approval process, but are not yet built. They don't have building permits and construction hasn't started, but these are projects that could be built without further discretionary approvals by the city. Sites like the former Valco or the Hamptons apartment sites are your notable properties.
Excuse me, is there a presentation that's not showing?
Okay, thank you very much. Vice Mayor Chow, you have a comment. And Vice Mayor Chow, you were saying, is there a presentation that is not showing? Is that your
Yeah, I'm
question?
just curious.
Okay.
If I could, I was going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, and there will be detailed presentations. I apologize if I just wanted to give a quick overview because there's a lot to cover, and we will be looking at material to follow along with this. I just wanted to touch on briefly again. There are pipeline projects.
Okay.
There are tier 1 projects and tier 2 projects that are listed on our recommended sites inventory, which will be shown shortly. And just to clarify, what are the recommended sites are the pipeline sites and the tier 1 sites. The tier 2 properties were shown in the commission meetings, and those could be alternate properties that could be added to the sites inventory to replace properties or just in addition to those. As I said earlier, the RENA number is 4,588 units. Our pipeline and tier 1 sites, along with the city's accessory dwelling unit potential, gets us to well over that number, where we would have approximately 5,800 housing units that could be built, as shown on the recommended inventory. We will be going through that shortly. And if you attended the Planning Commission and Housing Commission meetings, the order in which we're going to go through that will be starting in the eastern portion of the city and moving to the west. We will be starting with the Valco shopping district and the North Valco Park areas, again, going through the neighborhoods and special areas of the city. Again, I realize there's a lot to get through, and many of the people have attended all of the meetings earlier in the year. I am assuming, based on the number of meetings we had with the Planning Commission and the amount of material we're going to be covering, that there will be follow-up meetings. And staff is assuming that there will be a meeting most likely held shortly after Labor Day or early September, when our consultant is available, where we can pick up based on wherever we leave off tonight. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Andy Flower at EMC Planning, and he will be walking us through the properties in the order I just described, and there should be ample opportunity for public input and questions as we go through the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Luke. Welcome, Andy. Let's get some estimates on the various presentations here. What kind of time estimates would you be able to provide us at this point?
Well, if I may begin by just showing the order by which we'll be going through each of the areas. So it will be up to the council for how much time we spend with each of these areas, and we'll be going back and forth according to the attachments that were included in your packet tonight. So we'll be looking at the list, and then we'll also be utilizing our balancing act map, so the home and council can follow to discover which sites may lead to further discussion, which sites we may move forward with.
Okay, so Andy, let me understand your proposal here. So what you would like us to do is to go through in numerical order these 16 listed areas, is that correct? And then after each area, you would like us to ask questions and consider those areas, piecemeal, or are you suggesting a different format in terms of how your presentation is going to go? Because what I like to do, let me just finish that, if you don't mind. What I like to do is to give you the opportunity to provide the presentation and then get some public commentary and then bring it into the council, so that we basically have a sentiment of the public in addition to the information that you're providing us. And so if you were to provide that information in presentation format from a consolidated whole, about how much time would that take you?
Well, a consolidated whole, we can look to the whole of the list that we provided. So we could go page by page. I don't know if that, if that, that could be a big, and if anyone wants to go deeper in and to look at the maps that correspond with the list of sites that we've moved through Planning Commission as a recommended list of Tier 1 and pipeline projects, and Tier 2 as backup sites, we could do that. We could start with the list and then move deeper into looking at maps if so desired. Okay,
well, let me just repeat my question one more time. About how long would it take you to go through that presentation if it was as a just so I can get a sense of the timing of this. We stand at 8:43. Is it going to take you an hour? Is it going to take you 90 minutes? I mean, about how long would it take if we were to take a presentation, take public comment, and then bring it back to the council for follow-on questions?
I think we are anticipating this would be more of a workshop that we would be going area and there would be discussion for each area, similar to what we did for the Planning Commission. But if we're otherwise just going to be looking at the list, that is something that I could present in very short amount of time. But I don't know how meaningful it would be if it would. I'm going to look to our team to see if there's any additional comments.
Okay, well, let's try it the way that you're describing at this time. I think one thing that would help with the public is to visualize a map rather than a list of 16 locations. And I do see some hands raised from my colleagues on the dais here. So before we go into that, Andy, in the interest of trying to make sure that we have both an efficient and an effective process, let me talk to Vice Mayor Chow, followed by Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow, did you have a comment?
So this is the first time this item comes to the council agenda, and many of the audience who attend council meeting have not attended the planning or any other commission meetings. And I feel that there seems to be some background information missing. There should have been slides of the allocation, slides of our performance from the previous housing element, which I actually requested in the last time housing element was on the council agenda. And this was the format back in 2014 it was presented. Here's a location from last time, 5 housing elements identified, 5 housing elements approved, and then now this year, this cycle, we have this many units and how many have been approved. There should have been a table, and here this many pipeline units, what those means and how many we still need to identify. That piece of background information appears to be missing.
Right, so you're essentially asking for the presentation.
I think people are very confused.
I understand, Vice Mayor Chow. So let's go to Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, do you have any comment before we go back here?
Yes, thank you. So I did print out a map, and it doesn't match with any of these sites. And I'm on the page showing the projects, and the listing goes up to 26 North Valco Park on the EngageCupertino.org site, available housing sites page. I go to downloadable documents, and I don't know if anyone else is having this problem, but the reference map for recommended sites, I click on that, hoping. It tells me site can't be reached. So it might be a me problem, but I need to see the map because I can't, yeah. Okay. And so when so I am unable to get that. So if somebody could email me that, and I need it with the numbers.
I want to better understand. You need it with the numbers. You mean?
Yes, because in the recommended sites inventory, you have each Creston Farlap is 1, Fairgrove 2, Garden Gate 3. So I need to see a map that has those numbers on it, large enough to read. The other map with regards to Balancing Act also had numbers on it, but they were all different, all the different zones. So if we could have someone who does have access to that, please email us a copy. And I think that should be it's a pretty basic bit of information that we should have in the packet.
Councilmember Moore,
yes.
I think you if I may, Mayor.
Sure, of course.
Yes.
Go ahead.
If it's in there, tell me.
If you may find the map starting on page 539 of the PDF helpful.
539?
Yes, that's what I'm.
You mean 1539 maybe?
Mine says 539.
Maybe you have an older version of the packet.
Oh, it is 1539. I'm sorry.
153. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, good, great. And when I get there, I'll find the map?
Yeah, there's separate maps for each.
I'm looking for
area.
the overall. I found these. Yeah, I found the separate ones. Right, showing the neighborhoods. I was hoping for a composite one showing the whole city, like this one.
Mayor, I can email Councilmember Moore map right.
Yes, Councilmember Way, go ahead.
I will email Councilwoman because I think it's in the package. I receive it separately. Okay, so I'll email Councilmember Moore now.
Thank you. It's, yeah, the overview map isn't available, and I think that
And
would,
it has very listed Monte Vista area, it's not numbered, but it's listed, Garden Gate. So I'll send it right now, okay?
So, Councilmember Moore, the map that you have printed out, where did you obtain that?
I need that
this
map
is from,
too.
this is no good. This is balancing act. The numbering's all wrong.
Okay, the numbers are off. All right.
Okay, I'll send it to everyone.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way. Let's go ahead and provide that moment to get that material information. Hopefully, someone can share that map so that we can share with the public precisely what.
Mayor Paul,
Yes,
before we go too far into this, the other issue I had was that the June 24th recommended sites inventory, which was discussed by the Planning and Housing Commission's joint meeting, the numbering there included, there would be like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, and if an item was removed, then when it came to us, they were reordered. So the numbers changed. So which makes it difficult to follow, for example, 10231, Adriana, I believe it's Adriana Avenue, it was a 1C, and then in our packet, it's now changed. So it's like a 1E or something. So those have altered not only, and I would have preferred a redlined version, so we would know what was removed and changed from the Planning Commission and Housing Commission when it came to us. I would have preferred a redline version. I did not know that this was occurring with the numbering. And there were new sites that were added between the Planning Commission looking at it and us looking at it, as far as I can tell. For instance, there was a 10-acre site in heart of the city which was not discussed. And honestly, my preference would be that because there are these changes, I would want it to go to the Planning Commission next week and have them talk about it. And I did want to have an explanation for just a very brief couple of sentences for why certain items were removed by the joint commissions, and so that we'd have more information, because there could be things that that were tier 2 items, or an item that was completely removed that we would want to have reconsideration of. And now we've got, with regards to balancing, I don't quite understand why it appears that there's been a group in heart of the city that is opened up now. But I think that it could significantly change things, especially when you're looking at minimum densities of like 30 dwelling units per acre on a 10-acre site. That is potentially a 300-unit site, which it changes the character of that particular area quite a bit.
Okay, well, let's go before we jump into too much of the substance in the absence of context. I understand that there are multiple ways of going about this. Do we dive into a list, or do we go ahead and provide a map and some context in presentation format? But let me go ahead and reference a couple of people with their hands up in the Zoom function. One of them is the Director of Community Development, and then Luke Connolly also has his hand up. So let's go in that order. Director Fu, did you want to speak to any of the discussion points from council that have been brought forth at this time?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. With respect, I would just ask if the council would entertain a presentation, allow the consultant just to initiate a presentation, and then so along the way give us the opportunity to address some of these concerns and questions. That's all I wanted to ask, if that was possible.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, thank you, Director Fu. I tried to kick that off by getting a time estimate for how long that presentation might last, and then Vice Mayor Chow indicated that there didn't seem to actually be a presentation with regard to some of the overarching items that we've been trying to interconnect between the prior commission work and where we're at right now. And then, of course, Councilmember Moore indicated that there seems to be a number of different issues, but with regard to the enumeration of sites between commission meeting and our council meeting, it would probably be good for anyone following along to be able to have a key so that you could reference prior discussions, because of course this is an important discussion to our community and a number of people are following this quite closely. And so, I think the points are legitimate. Let's go to Luke at this point. Luke, did you want to have a follow-up comment before we brought it back to our outside consultant.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I wanted to try to respond to Councilmember Moore's comment about sites being added, particularly in the heart of the city crossroads area. Sites have been added, but they are all listed as what are tier 2 sites, which I think will get clearer as Andy's able to proceed, that those are not sites that are recommended for approval, but are listed in this case because a couple of those sites, the Fontana's Restaurant, the Pizza Hut site in particular, came up during commission meetings. So we added those as potential if there was going to be any interest in, say, swapping out sites. That way those tier 2 properties would be there. So they are not part of the recommendation to approve tonight, but that's why those sites are on there in particular. And the only other thing I could say is, as Director Fu had just mentioned, it might be easier, I think, if Andy were to get into the presentation, since this is fairly interactive, that it might just be easier if we proceeded that way to get into the material.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do that with those prefacings and hopefully concerns that will be addressed along the way. Thank you very much, Luke, as well as Director Fu. Andy, why don't we bring it back to you? And I did try to get a sense of the overall time, but I do also appreciate and acknowledge that this is a very multi-pronged discussion process, and so we have allocated a significant amount of time this evening, and we also have the expectation that it very well may not be a completed discussion this evening, and so there is a full preparation to continue the discussion to our September 6th meeting if needs be. And so at this point, why don't we go ahead and bring it back to you, Andy, and I'll let you proceed with the discussion points that you were wanting to unveil to us at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I will bring us to the website, because this is the place that we would like for council and for the public to visit. We do have a lot of different materials that we're working with all at once, and this is a much more interactive way to discuss our opportunities going forward. We have a survey that I'd like to bring everybody's attention to. This survey is separate from the sites that we're talking about, and I just want to bring everybody's attention to our deadline of August 19th. We would love for folks to join in and have your voice heard. So we also have surveys specific to the sites, and this enables everyone to comment on sites specifically. And within this, we do have the downloadable documents. I'm not sure what the issue was in being able to see an image of our very first balancing act map today. And I think maybe that's where the confusion is between the numbering that we have here, which is directly associated with the balancing act map. And there's several places to find the balancing act map, including right here at the top of this survey page. What we also have for everyone's viewing is the available housing site survey results. So this is new just as of today, and we would thoroughly encourage council members to take a look at what the public is saying about these sites so far. We'll be sure to include this, as it was just produced today, with your next council packet. So within our balancing act map, we now have a video that can help people understand how to use the map and how to use it in relationship with the survey opportunities that we just saw. So whether as a member of the public, you learn better with being able to see a map or being able to read a list, we make both of those available to you in ways that you can communicate back to us. So we'll speak just briefly about the buffer. Right now we have a buffer in excess of 15% for the full RHNA. If we were to have 20%, we would still be 329 homes over the required RHNA amount with the 20% buffer. So what we're bringing to council today is an opportunity to look at the list that we have, and there is opportunity to remove sites if you so desire, and we have tier 2 sites to be additive if you choose to remove a site that is in excess that would put us below the desired RENA. We have pipeline projects that equal 3,545 homes. There may be a few of these pipeline projects that might not quite reach that definition that HCD is looking for. So in our next iteration, you might see some of the pipeline projects listed instead as tier 1. We can go through area by area, and we have maps. Let's see, if I switch, are you able to see our map references? Here, this is, we have maps according to the areas. Are you able to see that on your screen right now? I see Councilmember Way nodding yes. So within each of our areas, you can see the tier 1, tier 2, and pipeline projects entirely within those areas. And these numbers relate directly to the sites list that we have. But this evening, because there was a desire to go from east to west, that's how we've imagined our order of discussion might be. So that concludes my presentation of the website and the different parts that we can look at today going forward. So at the council's discretion, and Mayor Paul, we would be happy to move forward in a way that you would direct us.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. So let me try to do this, and I apologize for my focus. I actually have a different monitor on the dais. I think maybe for the purposes of clarity, it might help if I were to share a document, and so let me see if I can do that. It comes from attachment C, which I think might have had some issues with loading, but let me refer this to Councilmember Moore. So here's a map of, maybe I could try to do a fit to width to make it a little bit more visible. These are the tier 1, tier 2, and the pipeline projects. Councilmember Moore, so are you referring to a map like this as long as it were numbered?
I'm numbering mine.
Oh, you're numbering yours right now. Okay. Oh, I think that's basically a yes. And so maybe, I mean, without putting, kind of a repetitive point on it, I mean, if we do end up going to another evening here, continuing it, it would probably be a useful reference for everyone. But Andy, it seems like what you're saying is that essentially we're going from the eastern side over to the western side on your list here. So why don't we have you take that away, and let me see if I can get back to my Zoom function so I can stop sharing. Oh gosh, let's see. Okay, that's a little bit more challenging there. Stop share, there we go. Okay, so Andy, why don't we bring it back to you at this time, and have you start going through the site selection discussion process as you had originally envisioned it, with the advisement. I think maybe, just depending on how far we get this evening, we can, just kind of, take those follow-ups between now and September 6th, and, maybe deliver some of those materials that are requested. I see a indication from our city attorney Jensen, as well as Vice Mayor Chow. Chris, did you want to speak to?
It was just a point of order, Mayor. I was wondering how you plan to win and how you plan to take public comment.
I was planning on taking public comment, and that's one reason why I think it would be kind of nice to get more of a consolidated presentation, right, as to the various sites. I guess I don't want to put any kind of a fine or blunt point on it, but I guess it would be nice to have kind of an overarching sense of where we're at, right, in this discussion process, So to Vice Mayor Chow's original point, if we had a slide deck with a presentation that we could, basically orient people with, not just with the background coming up to this point, but what's also being presented us this evening, even if it were in an effective shorthand as to the longer discussion. Let's say the longer discussion takes us somewhere in the order of 5 to 6 hours, including this evening and a subsequent evening. At least the public could be oriented with regard to what the focus of the overarching topic is. But it does sound like what's going to happen at this point is we're going to kind of go through the site selection on a essentially geographic basis from the east to the west. Now, that being the case, let me go ahead and ask either perhaps Andy or Luke, would you feel comfortable providing a somewhat more detailed overarching description of what we're looking at from east to west, so that we may reach out to the public and ascertain their sentiment and commentary after you provide that presentation, so to speak. And I'll move my window back here to the laptop monitor so I can have a better, kind of a virtual eye contact, so to speak. So Andy or Luke, are you prepared to provide that so that we can open it up to the public and they can kind of provide their feedback to us at this point? Because and just as a point of public process, I think our alternative is basically, what you're suggesting, Andy, right? We're going and talking about each of these, sites, but then we open it up to the public and they talk, and then we, I think maybe it would be a bit more efficient to go ahead and give them an overarching sense, right? So that we can open it up to the public and then hear those comments and then, take them under advisement as we go along in the more prolonged process.
And just to be clear, I don't want to provide something that's unnecessary because it is in your staff report. Do you want us to talk about how we came upon these sites through the Planning Commission and the guidance that they gave us, and how we first began with the HCD guidance of looking at all sites between 1/2 acre and 10 acres? All of those property owners were received a letter that suggested that their property may be a candidate for the housing element opportunity sites list. And we provided with them a link that they could then sign on to show that they have property owner interest. So that was one factor that we took into consideration, because we understand that HCD this round is wanting to make sure that the sites that we include in our list, that they have a reasonable chance of being developed within this next 8-year cycle. And through their own research, their analysis shows that for a site less than 1/2 acre, which I can say that Cupertino was successful in developing affordable housing, specifically just under 1/2 acre in this last round. So that gives us a little bit of an argument to say back to HCD that if we find a site that's less than 1/2 acre, particularly if there is property owner interest, that we could give that example, that it is possible in Cupertino, it is supported, and it could be done. So there are numerous variables similar to that, but these are the primary ones: the size, whether or not there's property owner interest, whether or not the zoning can allow the capacity, and if not, is there a willingness, is there a political will for that zoning density, height to be altered for this next cycle. And without getting into the weeds about what then that would look like, because what we're looking to right now is to at least have a full and complete list of sites that are worthy of consideration by the council, so that we can move forward with our environmental review, because that is the lengthiest piece of our housing element update process. So we want to kick that off as quickly as we can. So our goal this evening and any subsequent evening with this topic is to end with a list, and we've tried to bring you a list that was well vetted through the Planning Commission and all of what they understand to be important values for Cupertino in winnowing down that initial list of nearly 400 sites. And we now bring this list before you that puts you over the basic requirement from HCD, so that you have room to apply your own understanding of Cupertino value system to negotiate the last details of which sites to include and not include. And I see Luke's hand raised. I want to invite you to join me here.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that, Andy. So thank you very much. Gosh, let me, you did start off with a question there, Andy, with regard to what it is that we would like to kind of kick this off with. And, if I'm being oblique or opaque about what the kind of general expectation or hope is, I apologize for that. But I think just to be really straightforward about it, it would be good for the members of the general public to have a basic overview of where we stand, and if that includes the beginning of the site selection process and the acreage that was initially considered, maybe some bullet points with regard to the steps that have taken us to this first site selection discussion in council, as well as the overarching types of impact points that, for instance, informs the very basic kind of format that you have contemplated here, of, for example, going from the east side of our city to the west side of the city. Then perhaps that would be the best stepping off point, if you will, for us to be able to derive input from the public. And so, our regular format is essentially a matter of doing that. We normally have a presentation. It gets a good kind of context to what we're discussing, and it just allows us to gather that feedback in an efficient manner. But I do see Luke does have the hand up, and Luke, I appreciate your attempts at providing that introduction at the very beginning. But frankly, I think with regard to some kind of descriptive and written deliverable as to what brings us to this point in the city council after a fairly significant amount of work. And I don't want to, kind of give short shrift to all the work that has been, occurring over the last 9 or 10 months. We would like to be able to have that kind of, descriptive orientation as to where we are in the beginning of this discussion. And so, Luke, did you have anything that you'd like to provide at this point? Because I think really the primary issue is, do we essentially open up for public comment at each of these time points when we go through the geographic areas east to west? Or perhaps we might be well suited and well served to kind of go back and create a presentation and provide that information in that kind of requested deliverable for the sake of the public. So Luke, I see Director Fu, you also have your hand up. Any thoughts or comments with regard to these perspectives?
Yeah, I can certainly start and then have Luke support me if necessary. I think we were attempting a method that worked for the Planning Commission, but I hear the council. And what we could do, we have Pew Ghosh, our planning manager, here tonight as well. So if it pleases the mayor and the council, we could make an attempt to put up a map and discuss, make sense of this and discuss all the sites. If that's something that the council feels like it's beneficial at this point, as opposed to sort of the method that we had planned.
Yeah, I'm open to suggestion. I mean, I'm happy to refer this to our acting city manager, Diane Thompson. I understand that time is of the essence here. We want to be able to have a good process, and I think part of the good process is to make sure that the public is initially provided the context as to where we are. I can provide some of this context, right? I can tell you that we have the site selection process. There have been multiple, visits upon our planning commission. There is a website that's been, socialized to the public. There is a deadline of August 19th. But if we were to have it in a collected format that was considered and could actually be a deliverable that the public looks at, I think that would be not only consistent with our general practice, but also really beneficial for such a major project that we have in front of us. So Diane, any thoughts or input on this point?
Yes, what I'm hearing from you, Mayor Paul, is that you would be interested in having a presentation that is more formal than what you're receiving this evening, perhaps, and that it's something that you want in a written format, a PowerPoint presentation, and you want that in advance of a discussion on the sites. Is that correct? Or is it just that you want our consultant and our staff to provide you at this time with a more comprehensive sort of here's where we've been and here's how we got to where we are today regarding the housing sites?
I think I'm being reflective of the sentiment of council and the public when I say it's more of the former than the latter. We need that written deliverable in order to examine it, in order to process it, and place us as a public into the proper position to start really going over this particular topic. And you know, I'm inclined to say, Diane, that even though we sit at August 16th, and it is really important for us to be moving this forward, with our original plan being to, probably continue this to September 6th, perhaps it would be of good use in the ensuing time to collect that starting point so that our public can really be, well informed and can provide those initial comments. I want to be as nice and polite as possible as I can about this, but as to the second one, the kind of more protracted, involved, kind of descriptive, on the fly, effort, I don't think that's a great idea with regard to some project like this. And so if you're hearing my point, I think perhaps it might make some sense to provide some more time. Now, I'm only 1 out of 5. Vice Mayor Chow has a hand raised. Councilmember Way has a hand raised actually before Vice Mayor Chow. And so I'd love to hear from my colleagues on the dais as well on that point. And Diane, did you want to speak to that before we go to some other input points from council?
Sure. So it sounds like the next step is for the council, the rest of the council, to weigh in perhaps briefly on if they're in concurrence with you, Mayor, that they would like a written deliverable prior to a discussion of the sites. And if that's the case, then maybe we could have some discussion regarding what that looks like. And that would be a useful discussion so that we can get to the next point in having a discussion of the sites and moving forward.
And thank you very much, Diane. And your colleague in staff, Chris, were you waving your hand in order to be heard briefly before we go to Councilmember Way, then Vice Mayor Chow?
No, I must have just been accidentally gesticulating, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Chris. Let's go to Councilmember Way. Hung.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I think this question might be for Chris and also for the mayor. Of the process, today we are here, and I've read the packages back and forth, and since we got the package, we know we're going to review the housing sites. And I understand the desire to inform the public of the process that lead to today's housing sites. But I thought it's pretty descriptive in the packages of what led to it, but it's not a presentation or a formal step-by-step. So it's good to have those. So my question is this is for maybe more for attorney, our city attorney. If today we already have on our agenda to discuss the housing sites, if we open up to public comment and go through the housing sites without making, the council can ask questions, clarification, and then September, we're going to come back with another meeting on the housing site with a presentation of where it comes wrong here and open up another public comment. Would that be a acceptable legal procedure that we can open up the public comment twice? Because we have 2 different agenda items. Because I don't want to wait today. Yeah.
I think you have a clear enough question, Councilmember Way. So let me refer that to Chris. Chris, the question seems to be about opening up to multiple rounds of public comment on this item.
Yeah, so that would be within council's discretion. I mean, the council is only required to take public counsel one on an agenda once, even on an agenda item that's continued. But but council does have the discretion to structure public comment differently as long as those that minimum requirement is met.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for the question, Councilmember Way. Let's go to Vice Mayor Chow and then Councilmember Moore.
Okay, first.
Turn on your mic.
First, this is the map sent by Councilmember Wei. I think we have seen that, but we are hoping that there will be numbers for each of these sites. That will be really helpful next time. And then I do think the background information is important for a lot of public members who don't attend other commissions. However, we are all here. There are community members who are waiting to make comments. I think we should still go through the sites and then receive public comments and provide our input. Then in September 6th, when it comes back, I hope that there will be background information like most every other project that we have. For example, you can look at 2014 housing element or any other project. A presentation would start with, here are all the meetings we've had so far, and then here is where we are in the timeline, and then here is, then you have past housing element performance and what we need to provide in this housing element. And then usually this presentation would end with, here are the future council meetings on this item. So that's just I think that has been done for almost every project. So, but I think that's not let that stop us. We can always improve next time. I hope we continue with the presentation from the consultant in the format they envision. That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Moore. It looks like you have taken an attempt from the dais to go ahead and number the map that we have in attachment C. So before I call on you next, I'll go ahead and share my screen to indicate that. Let me see if I can. It looks like my screen is actually, I'm not sure if it's showing this up. How's that as the, are you seeing a map with numbers on it here? So this might not be accurate, right? So this is one of the council members, I think numbering on an iPad from the dais, but I think this might be a good reference point for example, a good deliverable to help people kind of understand where they are and have clarity in the discussion. So Councilmember Moore, did you want to provide commentary at this time? You had your hand raised previously.
Yes. So some of the things that I'm interested in seeing would be the redlined August plan as opposed to having the sites just removed and dropped off of this. I had actually quite a few questions. I can pull up an email that I sent out, which might be beneficial. Okay, so my questions were essentially, I was looking at the June 24th, 2022 table, compared it with the August 9th, 22 table, and I wanted explanations of, for instance, why there was the removal of 1A and 1B, removal of 3A, and that I can provide this in email form. Why were 8A and 8D moved to Tier 2? Why remove 9B? Why remove 11B? And why were Heart of the City Crossroads now have so many more properties on Tier 2 than the June 24th version? What changed? Because I noticed that Heart of the City East was heavily loaded, except the Planning Commission did not have the opportunity to even consider the heart of the city. I believe it's the Crossroads area, it could be Central, but the main one, the 10-acre site, I believe is at Crossroads. So the Planning Commission didn't have an opportunity to even consider that for balancing, which is significant because at the minimum dwelling units per acre of 30, as I stated earlier, you get to 300, which is it's significant, and I think that warrants a good bit of discussion. And also I was curious why Heart of the City, Crossroads, and Central had no sites selected, and I think part of that is because they didn't have the opportunity to do it. Yes.
Councilmember Moore, just to be clear, let's not turn this into an omnibus. These are all my questions right now.
But there is another just kind of a general question. So there is a why these things happen, kind of, things got dropped off and all, but without just a one or two sentence explanation. But there is a question, and we're hearing it also from members of the public, and it is regarding the minimum density that we're seeing in the table. And I don't understand how that came to be, and for some, it seems a little arbitrary here and there, and we've gotten some feedback for at least one site where it was of concern how high that number was selected, and then there's some other locations where it seems low. And then for a policy, looking at that 10-acre site I've been referencing, would we be bound by having that density across the entire 10 acres? Where is our flexibility with that? Can we drop it below the 30 dwelling units per acre? So if someone could provide some background about the density, and then it seemed like there was a sweet spot for the developers, the amount of density they had, where it was where there was like just right amounts. So if someone from staff could provide us that info. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. I will check in with Councilmember Willie, and then let's go back to Luke, who still has his hand raised after Councilmember Willie's comments. Councilmember Willie.
Why don't you do Luke first?
Okay. Luke, please proceed.
Okay, actually, I had just a very brief comment from a few minutes back when we were talking about the potential September 6th date.
Yes.
For the continuation. I just wanted to mention that I believe our consultant, Andy, is not available on that evening, but is available on the 7th. I just wanted to put that out there before that date got locked in, unless that's going to be a date certain.
Okay, so Andy would be available on Wednesday instead of Tuesday of that week, is what you're saying. So
that's correct.
I think we can talk about it in the city clerk's office and city attorney's office as to how best to properly notice that, but duly noted. I know that Councilmember Way might have a conflict on Wednesdays. I think we had initially said, let's go ahead and continue our council meetings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, to the extent that we need to. But I think Councilmember Way, you were the one who had stated that Wednesdays were a bit of a conflict. Is that still?
Not every Wednesday. It's the third and fourth Wednesday. I cannot do it.
Okay, so that's certainly not the third or fourth Wednesday. Okay, so the 7th should be okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I believe we both might be out of, I think the League of Cities is on the 7th.
Yeah, there's the League of California Cities meeting in Long Beach. So that actually is most of us on council. That wouldn't be available, certainly not live. And so, Vice Mayor Chow, was that your comment that we had the league on that day?
Oh, actually, the first Wednesday night I have a conflict too.
First Wednesday night in September?
In every month.
Oh, on every month. Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, let's see what we can do here. I do note that we do have a relatively longer month this month. This is the third Tuesday of the month, but there are 2 more Tuesdays. So it's something to potentially consider. But it seems like we have hopefully in a piecemeal fashion the various bits and pieces of information that brings us here today for the council. You have a map that's enumerated with the original numbering system. You've obviously had multiple steps going through the Planning Commission. Jumping from one step to another step. maybe some of the enumeration could have been, tracked along the way. But, hopefully those materials in our future noticed agenda, if we don't finish this all this evening, we'll go ahead and take into account some of those sentiments. Vice Mayor Chow, calling you after Councilmember Woolley. Councilmember Woolley, thank you for waiting patiently. And what are your comments at this time?
So, thank you, Mayor. A few general comments and then the more specific one. So I fully agree with, the previous comments about the PowerPoint would really have helped us. The dialogue, we don't really are able to take notes and things of that nature. And if we have trouble, the residents watching are going to have, trouble. Within that, how did we get to this point in time? Well, I really think we need a roadmap from the beginning that we and the community can be looking at, constantly seeing what's transpired, where are we at, what still needs. We only need to look at it for 10 seconds, but I think it each time gets us back up to where we really are understanding. That being said, I realize tonight is about these housing sites. That's what I'm clearly hearing. Whereas our typical process is, we kind of go through, we also talk about resident engagement, and that's my priority. If we're going to make decisions that are going to impact our community, I need to be truly understanding to what degree has the community been able to be involved. That being said, I'm going to be requesting, I realize you probably can't do it tonight, but I did bring it up with the meeting, the pre-meeting that we had. There have been stakeholder groups, or at least they were intended. There have been tables at festivals. We have the current survey that's going to be shut down in less than 10 days. There have been the regular meetings where residents were able to talk. I clearly want to know how many residents, when we draw that line and say, how many residents have been involved up to this point in time? And unfortunately, I think we're going to find it's not many. And so an outgrowth of that is going to be, I think we need somebody, whether it's staff or a consultant, to truly be dedicated to the resident engagement function, possibly having a weekly how-to at someplace at City Hall, showing people how to get into the survey, answering their questions. We've got a lot of emails from residents telling us about their concerns, what they would and wouldn't want. I think every resident's input, email or at a meeting, needs to be given a record number and some type of an answer. Maybe it's an answer that was already applied to a different a question previously answered, or maybe it's one where we sit there and say, we're just not going to review those. But every resident question, I believe, needs to be given a acknowledgement, a number, and hopefully answers applied to those, so that when we then have to make this decision, which sites, what density, we know to what degree did the community get involved and what feedback did they give us. Okay, this is where we're at tonight. Housing sites identification. One last comment, and that would be, probably there's not going to be any photographs of these sites, but to me, visuals are a huge thing for both us and the community. Bingo, here's a picture of a 2-acre site. This would be the expected density. This is the adjacent parcels and what's on it. That picture to me is the community doesn't understand where all these sites are, let alone the impact. Okay, Mayor, thank you. Staff, you've done a huge amount of work. I understand it. Yep, let's move forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Woolley. And it's a good wish list of organizational items that you're describing. I would say, stipulated, we have the staff report. It's a 7-page staff report. It's a good staff report. I think without being too simplistic about this, I think it's really clear that we needed to have a presentation that's basically based upon the skeleton of the staff report. Now, what do we do right now? I mean, I don't think we're going to wait until, we have that basically. It sounds like let's just, go into this under the, assumption that information material has been absorbed. But I don't think we can really make that assumption as to the, entirety of the members of the general public that will be referencing this meeting, for instance. And if you look at our standard practice, there's always a presentation for these agenda items that has been, carefully considered. And for something like this, certainly on this magnitude, we should have had a slide deck as to, pointing out, particular, items that, could be of specific note. And so the thought that occurs to me is let's try to have that prepared, if this continues. I'm not sure if it continues to a date in early September. The city manager, the acting city manager and I had talked about this, and we were not able to make this happen as a continuation on Thursday. But I'll go ahead and repeat that we do have another couple of weeks in August, and given the fact that this is such an important, item, it may not be a bad idea to kind of revisit the idea of trying to get this, properly considered by the end of this month, at least, an additional time before we go into September. So that being the case, I'll make reference to that staff report. It does, provide that context, and so we'll take the consolidated whole of the comments from our council. Vice Mayor Chow, I do see that your hand is raised. Councilmember Moore, I do see your hand is raised as well. Diane, I see your hand is raised. I'm sure everyone has, a lot of input, but where I'm kind of edging right now is, given the totality of everything that we've, gone over, why don't we go to our members of the public, hear from them, and as Councilmember Way had, suggested in her comments, when we start up again and staff has a little bit more time to prepare this, with a proper presentation to kick it off, we'll open it back up to the public with the benefit of, what we're talking about tonight as well. So let me, Vice Mayor Chow,
scheduling first?
do you want to schedule the continuation meeting first?
We have 5 Tuesday in August, so August 30th is
Okay,
a Tuesday.
Vice Mayor Chow, let
or
me.
the Monday.
Okay, you're out of order.
Okay.
Let's go to Acting City Manager Thompson first, because I agree that is a very important point. That's the point that I would like our Acting City Manager to speak on, because we obviously need that kind of coordination in order to make that happen. Diane.
I would suggest that the council continue this item and let staff work with the council on possible dates, and we'll get something scheduled within the next couple of weeks or as soon as it's feasible.
I think that's a really excellent suggestion, frankly, Diane. And are you suggesting that we continue it at this point, or that we continue it after we have this discussion for the remainder of the evening?
It's up to the council. If you want to continue having a discussion, if you want to open it for public comment, that's fine. Or you may just want to continue this item to a date uncertain so that we have flexibility to identify a date that works for the council.
Thank you.
And that way we could move on to the 2 consent items that you have still to discuss. But it's really up to the council.
Okay, so this would be my preference. Let's, and I see that there are follow-ons on council. Councilmember Moore, your hand is still up in Zoom. Let's go to our members of the public, because people have been waiting and they want to speak to this item and hear the information that we have. Let's go to the members of the public, hear what people have to say at this point, bring it back to council for a follow-up round of commentary, and then continue this to a date uncertain, hopefully by the end of August, so that we can go ahead and, kind of roll this out in a proper fashion. With the stipulation, look, the material and the information is not missing, but to properly orient the discussion, let's go ahead and have that slide deck and let the people that are presenting this kind of think this through in the format of 5, 10, 15, 20, even 30 minutes, and just, give us that context. So at this point, what I'm going to do, colleagues, as well as our city staff and our members of the public, is to open this up to public commentary. I do see 5 hands raised in Zoom already, and I'll go ahead and read out those names. Scott Connolly, Jenny, Peggy Griffin, Lisa Warren, Gary Chawla, and Boris Evelich. And Madam City Clerk, do we have any blue cards to speak live on this item? Okay, so item number 24 doesn't have blue cards at this time. And so I'll go ahead and briefly go over the procedure here. You'll have 3 minutes to be heard on this item, and please have your hand raised in Zoom by the time the first speaker is speaking. If you do, then you will be called upon to speak on this item. You also have the option of a blue card live or to email cityclerk, one word, at cupertino.org during the time the first speaker on Zoom is speaking in order to have your comments read into the record for up to 3 minutes. So Scott Connolly, you're the first speaker on this. Welcome, and again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi there, Mayor Paul and council members. I had a statement to read this evening, thinking that this was going to be a seamless transition from the Planning Commission and Joint Commission handoff. And over the last hour, it clearly hasn't been that. I'm really disappointed. The last hour has been it's been challenging, and not a lot has been done, and it feels like the wheels have been spinning. I would say to Councilmember Moore, thank you for your leadership tonight for suggesting to move this agenda item up. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Luke Conley, senior planner. Earlier this week, I asked Luke what time he thought the housing element meeting agenda item would take place. And he emailed me tonight proactively after Council Moore's suggestion to let me know. Luke, you went way above and beyond, and I really appreciate that. The city's lucky to have you. I don't see why this meeting tonight couldn't have gone as the last 4 meetings have gone, which is the consultant gives a presentation, the public gets their general comments for 3 minutes, and then we break out into section by section. And after each section, the residents give an overview of their thoughts and public comment. The deadline for the submission is January of 23. The EIR is going to take 3 to 4 to 5 months potentially. And we're casually going about this. And there's been 6 weeks since the last meeting that council and commission were a part of. And it honestly feels like, Mayor Paul, your questions are great today. How is this meeting going to go? I don't know how internally the logistics works, but it seems like a half-hour phone call with planning staff, the consultants, and a couple of members of council could solve the direction. And it seems like when we start this meeting, it's the first time we've ever looked at this. We've been looking at this for 12 months. And there's a lot of important things I want to say. I think there's a lot of challenges with the list as it's presented today. And I'm stuck. I've been on this phone call since 6:45 this evening, 3 hours with 3 kids. And I grew up in Cupertino. I'm vested in the city, and I know everybody's trying to do their best. But there's got to be some leadership here. And, you know, EMC, let's get on the ball. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's provide some leadership. That's what you're being paid for. I say this with all due respect. This happens once every 8 years. And so it's new and it's tough. The last thing I'd say is there's 20 people on this phone call right now. Councilmember Wiley, you are spot on. Other than a few random emails, where's the farmer market? Where's the pop-up meetings? Where's the effort to let people know? EMC, we've asked for height on the attachment A. We've asked for owner interest on the attachment A. You provide all that detail in attachment B in written word. It would take me 20 minutes to update that list. Come on, guys, we're better than this. Mayor Paul, with all due respect, appreciate the opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Scott, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jenny, and just for the information of public, VJ Kazi is the additional hand raised. Madam City Clerk, are there any other through the mechanisms of the blue card or the email function?
No, Mayor.
Okay, so it'll be Jenny, followed by Peggy Griffin, Lisa Warren, Gary Chawla, Boris Evelich, and VJ Kazi. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I think everybody's doing the best they can. We all have hours invested in this. The planning commission meetings took hours. We went through these addresses one by one. I will tell you, this is probably my third housing element since 2002 in this city. And this has been a wild ride. I have never gone through a housing element like this. I hope in 8 years we don't have anything like this again. My opinion of HCD's handling of this entire housing element debacle across the state with all 482 cities and the counties is getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. We are being pressed with forces that we have never encountered before. There is so much of this that is being pushed at the state level, and I feel like the cities are being used. I'm willing to put my time in for my city. This is not the first time we've done this. We're here hours, we go through the meetings. I appreciate everything, the staff, the consultants, the city council members, planning commission, the public has gone through. You do things like this to defend your city. I feel like my city is under assault. And if anyone is not aware, HCD just nailed San Francisco for their housing element about 5 days ago. HCD is continually changing the rules of the game. They are persecuting San Francisco, who is trying to do their housing element, and they're saying now that they are going to investigate the entire city's housing element and why the city of San Francisco is not providing housing. Well, I'm sorry. HCD has got to stop changing the rules of the game as it's playing it. This is not fair, and people are beginning to get wise to it. I don't want an affordable housing overlay under any circumstances. I have read about this, and this is a tool that HCD would use. I believe what's happening is that HCD does not want to certify cities. This is Culver City, Huntington Beach, and Santa Monica as examples. They fail to certify once the city's submitted, and then they say, oh, we'll certify you if you put in an affordable housing overlay, which requires massive rezoning, and you can't, the public has no input and there's no parking. I don't want to go there. I don't want to play this game with HCD anymore.
15
It
seconds.
has to stop. So we should do this east to west and go property by property like the Planning Commission did. And we've done this before. Pew was there when we did this before, but it has to stop.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Jenny. And our next speaker is Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening, council members and staff. I second Scott Conley's comments, all of them. And I do second Jennifer Griffin's comments about continuing with the same process we've been doing in the planning and housing commissions. Do an overview, a comment, and then one by one go through. It's tedious, but you get the content and information from the public. Anyway, and that said, specifically, I'm looking at the 8/16/2022 Tier 1, Tier 2 projects map, and I'm looking at the North Valco where the hotel and Cupertino Village. And the map still has the hotel shown as a Tier 1, and yet the list in the recommended sites does not. The decision was to take the hotel off, but as a resident, I don't know which one takes priority. Are you going to follow the list or are you going to follow the map? Fix the map. And over, we've asked for maximum height and owner interest on the spreadsheet. It's really important making decisions. Another thing is site I think it's 7A on Linda Vista Drive. This is in West Cupertino. It's on Regnart Drive. The owner is willing to do 20 units per acre, and yet you're forcing them to do 30, and it doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. Why 30? Why does it have to be 30? Explain to us. And if it doesn't fit, then let's just add a few more sites. But don't force something that doesn't make sense. I see Stelling Gateway and also South De Anza has over 400 units. And I'm afraid that if you do setbacks and height restrictions, you're not going to be able to fit those units. So are they really realistic? I have this fear that you're just throwing numbers at them and they're really not going to fit on the sites. So please give us some guidance there. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Our next speaker is Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
There it is. Okay. Thank you. So I'll start by saying, since Scott Connolly was the first to speak, I agree with a lot of the comments he's been making throughout the months. I also am all but convinced he's not a Cupertino resident and that he's in the development realm. So he has knowledge that's helpful, but it also is starting to make me, anyway, sorry, Scott. I mean, I've said in meetings before that I agree with what he says. This time I agree with most of it, but not all of it. And I just have that observation, and Scott can correct me if he'd like to. Non-resident development, maybe even a lobbyist for all I know. I don't know. Sorry, Scott. So yes, the Planning Commission chose to go east to west. That was actually the chair's decision to do that. I just wonder why the map is numbered 1 through 26 spotty. Like why was it chosen that way instead of west to east or east to west? And I almost want to say I prefer that you approach this from west to east, because I saw when they were going east to west how it kind of went. And I think decisions might be altered or discussions might be different if you went a different direction. And it is a bit difficult to go, 1, 6, 12, 14, 2, 3, 9. It is difficult when you're following this list, but maybe that's the way to do it. I mean, I don't know why that was picked to begin with. I have gone through and tried to compare. It's so very frustrating that the site inventory lists do not match each other. The red line that Commissioner Moore would like to have, absolutely, and as detailed a red line as you can. We took this off, or we took this out of this, but we put it here because there was a request, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but Planning Commission wanted, and staff decided that P8, the original P8, which is Pipeline 8, was not really a pipeline project. So they were going to move it to be item 6E because it's in the Jollyman neighborhood. Well, you go to see if that happened, and there is no 6E, or it's everything's jumbled up and things are plugged in. And when they took that P8 out, I see now another P8. It's actually the wrong address, I believe. Well, I know it's the wrong address.
15 seconds.
Across the street. There are numerous problems. And until you're looking at this and can trust what it says, it's going to be a really hard document to go through.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. And just by way of a very brief answer, I think the numbers 1 through 26 were by alphabetical order initially. So let's go to Gary Chawla. And Gary, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Gori Chavla. I'm currently a rising junior at Cupertino High School, and the very first thing I want to talk about is that creating affordable housing will only lead to the prospering of our community in Cupertino. It's important to have a fair reflection of this community in the analysis of housing needs, and we must endeavor to include as many people in our city as possible in order to better inform the policies and programs the council will need to come up with to remedy housing needs. This means that we must establish a thorough criteria for the designation and development of these new houses and ensure that the already established 15% of new housing units are set aside for lower income families. I'm also the president of the Cupertino High School Anti-Racism Task Force. The historic redlining and discrimination in housing policy is well documented, and Cupertino is not an exception. This housing element is our opportunity to enact anti-racist policy that gives minority populations the housing opportunities they have historically been denied. This time around, it is the law for us to affirmatively further fair housing. This means planning for and facilitating the production of substantially more homes of all types, including 6, 8, and 10-story apartment buildings for low-income renters and homeowners throughout the city, not just concentrated in 2 or 3 parts of town. Equitable and affordable housing should be prioritized around resources that are very much needed for members of our community, including schools, workplaces, parks, libraries, and more. However, I have to implore the council to not have pipeline projects run the housing element. 3,545 homes are expected to be pipeline projects out of a total 4,600 needed homes. That is about 80%. And as we have seen in other cities like San Francisco, these pipeline projects are not the way to develop homes. I've lived here for most of my life, and I've seen all of these apartment buildings that you're talking about, the Valco apartment buildings and apartment buildings down the street that have been in development apparently for like most of my life. And I've never seen them come to fruition as actual apartment buildings. I've only seen the construction because there's so many problems with the building permit and getting the actual developers to build the homes. So I am hoping that the council will not ensure these pipeline projects and will instead have a different plan that will actually get built within the 8 years we have in this housing element. I also want to strongly encourage the council to reach out to youth when thinking about the housing element. We are the ones who are going to be living with your decisions, and alongside many members of our community, we hope you will value our voices and work to create safe, equitable, and affordable housing for all. This is our students, our elderly population, our young adults, our working class population, and much more. Your decisions regarding the housing element shape so many futures, and I implore you to use this power to make housing an exciting prospect for our community, rather than a daunting, arduous task. Thank you.
Thank you, Gori. And next we have Baris Evelich. Welcome, Baris. And I apologize if yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. And first, I agree with many of the comments before me by the public and council members. And thank you, Mr. Mayor and council and staff for the opportunity to speak tonight and for the work that you do. My family are longtime owners in Cupertino, and our property on Linda Vista Drive is included in the current recommended site inventory. Change is inevitable, and we know that, but we want to be part of the solution in a rational way. I sent an email to you today concerning tonight's meeting about our parcel and specifically the proposed density. I also spoke during one or more Zoom Planning Commission meetings and said that we are not developers. We also submitted a stakeholder application form early in the process that we believe was the best use of our property, and that was for attached townhomes. We are more than willing to support our site being included in the housing element, but not at 30 units minimum per density per acre. Our approximately 3-acre undeveloped property has changed during this process from 15 dwelling units per acre to 20 dwelling units per acre to now 30 dwelling units per acre density without much, if any, discussions about the practicality of the densities for our site or involving developers in the process that I know. The 20 dwelling unit acre density was also recommended by the Planning Commission and consultants hired by the committee for this project early on, and we agree. We did our homework, and were advised by several developers probably better described in my email that I sent to you, that 30 dwelling units with a 3-story height limit will not produce a feasible housing product type and would not meet the city's parking standard requirements, nor, most importantly, not appropriate for the neighborhood. We feel the best use of our property for the community and the neighborhood is a 20 dwelling unit acre density. We respectfully and formally ask that you address this and return our property to a 20 dwelling unit per acre density. And I sincerely hope that what's before you is the only option you have, that you don't have the opportunity to change the densities that have been provided to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And our final speaker is Vijay Kazi. Vijay, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Paul, council members and staff. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion. Thanks, Luke, for providing pointers on what would be a good place to bring our opinion up. Thanks, everyone, for doing their best on this important topic. Not sure if it is the perfect time to bring my comment up, but I wanted to make sure I get it in. So my wife and I would like to take this opportunity to plead our case and express deep interest and commitment to build a single-family residence on the vacant land for our family to move in at 21670 Lomita Avenue, APN 357180005. This is located at the intersection of Lomita and Imperial. It is a vacant land with approximately 5,800 square footage and is currently zoned as ML. It is in the Bub Road special area, and from my understanding, the only impediment to us building a home here is the zoning. We would like to plead some of our observations with regards to this property. Well, the property is zoned as ML. It is surrounded by a number of residential buildings. We have townhomes directly opposite to the land, which is a corner lot. In fact, even though this area is zoned as ML, there is no clear demarcation on the zoning, with the area having a mixture of ML and residential properties right next to each other. We honestly feel a single family residence here will fit right into the neighborhood without standing out odd. There are at least a couple of properties right next or very close to the property that are residences on ML zoning, and in some cases on a much smaller lot. With the land currently being vacant land, there is no fear of any kind of displacement on this property. The property is located very conveniently close to the top-rated schools. I have 2 kids, and it would be ideal if we are able to move in here into Cupertino to attend these schools. We've been constantly following the housing element update, the Joint Planning Commission and Housing Commission meetings. We noticed discussions where even upzoning of certain areas of Bub Road special area was being discussed if the desired interest from the owners is seen. We would like to take this opportunity to express great interest and commitment to build a single family home and move in there if we are permitted to do so. We also feel this could be one of the building sites on the western side, that is Monte Vista, which could help in a small way improve the balance of the new housing site, because most of the sites are on the eastern side of Cupertino. And we're also seeing a drop in school attendance at Cupertino. And as I mentioned, we have 2 kids there. We would love to attend the highly rated Cupertino school. We did reach out to the Planning Commission. We were told our property is smaller than the State Housing and Community Development STD minimum lot size of 0.5 acres. So really look forward to, we really hope we'll consider our request to build a single family home here on this vacant land and guide us on how to proceed further. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Vijay. And let's go ahead and bring this back up to the dais. Quick time check at 10 o'clock. Let's go ahead and conduct a round of commentary from council before we go ahead and continue this item. And Diane, I think you had mentioned going and polling council separately, but I'd be happy to try to identify some available dates, by people if they wanted to share when they're available in the next couple of weeks. We're on August 16th, and so the end of the month will be 2 weeks and a day from now. So we would have, I guess, a couple of Tuesdays potentially to, try to get this, revisited upon our council in a special meeting. So Kitty, you have Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised. Did you want to start us off with some follow-on comments from the public? If not, I would be happy to do so. Okay, I'll go ahead. So I'll make this very brief. I actually think that this is a fairly, useful format. We have had some, albeit a bit disjointed information presented, but I think we have a flavor of the sentiments coming from the public at this point. So let's go ahead and hit the reset and get in a special meeting in the next couple of weeks and a day, the ability to start this off. With regard to the format, I think east to west will probably work in a unidirectional sense so that people have a geographic, I agree with the planning commission's, rationale there. It's just a little bit more logically cohesive. With regard to the other items that we've heard, numbering and being able to keep consistency and tracking the discussion, let's just assume, let's give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they've been following, since the beginning, or at least for the people that have been, and make it, readily available to go ahead and track the discussion of particular items. In the spirit of kicking us off with regard to availability, I'm just looking at my calendar right now for the next couple of Tuesdays. On the 23rd, I'm open. On the 30th, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Tuesdays, but I'll just kind of put that out there right now. I do have a commitment at 7:40 on Tuesday, August 30th, but I think I might be able to get that moved to another time. And if we need to go to additional days, then let's go ahead and visit that through staff coordination. So, Councilmember Moore, you still have your hand raised at this point, and so I'll just take people in order of hands raised on the Zoom function, or if you don't have it, then maybe just wave at me. Diane, did you want to speak at this point? You have your hand up.
I just wanted to mention that staff and the consultant are available on August 30th, if that works for the council.
Okay, 2 weeks from today. Okay, thanks very much, Diane. Councilmember Moore?
That works.
Okay, great. Councilmember Moore just said that works. Presumably that means August 30th works for your schedule. But did you want to give some follow-up comments at this point, Councilmember Moore?
Well, I think that I've made all the requests that I want, and I think they're pretty straightforward. I want to be able to track the sites that were removed, the redlining. I'd like to understand that, have a quick little two sentence bit for what the rationale was, and then because my concern is that when we're going east to west and looking at the heart of the city properties, that now with the addition of these new properties, that there's been some opportunity to balance out and distribute the density better, and we haven't gotten so far a clear understanding, or I don't have a clear understanding about how the minimum density in these tables was selected. So I am concerned for the member of the public who has the 30 dwelling units per acre, and I'm seeing that number around in a few areas. And I do have the vague recollection of some comments about what developers are looking for, what density really is workable, that pencils out for them, and I'd like to have that information as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Councilmember Moore. All right, I don't know whose hand raised was first, whose hand was raised first. So I see it in order of Vice Mayor Chow, then Councilmember Way. So let's go with Vice Mayor Chow, and then we'll go to Councilmember Way.
Yeah, I agree that we should have some rationale of how the density is determined, and then also with existing setback requirement and how the number of units is assigned for each site. But I do wish that today we still get an overview and go through the sites, so that we don't postpone everything to the next meeting. On August 30th, I'm available.
Okay, great.
So
well, it seems
go
like
through it,
yeah.
have a presentation.
Vice Mayor Chow, thank you.
Eager to have that.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. I think that opens up another strand of discussion, actually, and I'll go ahead and invite people to speak to it as to whether people would rather continue this discussion until presumptively August 30th. It seems to be working for a majority of us so far. For my part, I think I would rather just go ahead and continue it, having the input provided and giving staff and our outside consultant a chance to kind of reset and absorb some of the commentary that's been provided tonight. But let's see what the will of the majority happens to be. Councilmember Way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Paul. I think we should go ahead and proceed, and so the staff can receive comments. I do have one comment. Is I think a couple of the attendees have mentioned that San Francisco's housing element was rejected, and we did receive a comment from a resident too. So I am worried about our pipeline project. For example, the Hamptons was approved 2016 with a 10-year entitlement. It's been 6 years. So that's 600 units. Can we get a letter from Hamptons? Are they really going to do it in the next 4 years? Because the entitlement would end in 4 years. And Valco, the Rise, their 3-year entitlement that started May 2020 because of the Friends of Cupertino lawsuit that's was settled, declared in May 2020. So they have 3 years entitlement. That would expire May 2023, which is next year. So are they really going to go forward to it? So what I'm hoping is our next round of housing element site on the 30th, which I'm available, that we have more properties on tier 2 that we can maybe as backup. We can really, the consultant can work on it and then give us some suggestions so we can have some backup units that if 1 or 2 of these pipeline projects don't go through. That would be my comment.
Okay, Councilmember Roy, let me just clarify what you said at first. Did you want to continue with our discussion right now?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so you would rather not go to our consent items that we pulled off calendar before we kind of continue with this discussion?
I think we should go a round of a round of comment for the housing element. This is really important.
Okay, so you basically you want to use the rest of our time tonight, basically, to focus. I understand that. Okay, great. Councilmember Moore, your hand is raised again. Let me visit Councilmember Willie. John, did you want to speak at this time with regard to some follow-on comments? And there's a pending question as to whether we utilize the rest of the time between now and midnight to stay on this item.
So once again, I don't want to leave tonight without, expressing, I think somebody from staff needs to be dedicated to resident engagement. We heard tonight from Gauri Chala, who sounds to me, would love to be included in a meeting about housing sites and stuff. So I think we need more resident engagement, somebody who's dedicated to it, who's not being time shared, so that we raise the bar on getting our community's input. And the recording all resident comments, concerns, everyone gets a number, whether or not something truly gets answered. But I think every resident should not have to come to meeting after meeting. Like tonight, the one resident talked about 20 units versus 30 units. It should be recorded, addressed, and each resident given a number, and he can go back and look at it. And it may say, we're not going to look at it. The Hamptons, I think we've all been, wishing it was going to happen. 6 years of the 10 years is running out. City Council gave them a density of 600 additional units, bringing it to 900. I think a penalty, if it's not permitted and in construction within those 4 years, that there would be a penalty, and the entitlement of the 600 units, the density, whatever it is, would drop to 500 or 400. Something that's going to push them to make it happen. Those types of things. Same thing with Valco. I mean, let them know that we would like to see those housing units get built, and we're here to work with them, but they got to start building those housing units. And so I'll leave it with that. That's my main focus, and then whatever we choose to do tonight, and the 30th would work for me. I'll make it a priority. So
okay, great. Thanks, Councilmember Willie. So are you saying that you are neutral as to whether we push on tonight on the housing element? And you'll basically go with what?
I'm big on efficiency. I don't know how efficient it would be, but I'm also perfectly willing to stay in this chair while we, put in the hours, if that is the consensus.
Yeah. Now that I think about our consultant, Andy, not being available on the 6th of September, it might make more sense to push on right now so that we can go ahead and get more of this done. Councilmember Moore, your hand is up again. Did you want to speak to this or any other point?
Yes. So these are a couple questions for Chris. With regarding the pipeline projects, what direction or information do you have from HCD regarding the inclusion of pipeline projects, for one, and to the issue of looking at the sites that we have here? I personally don't want to look at the list unless we are going to look at a combined list of what the Planning Commission had. Their recommended site list from June 24th, it combined with the new list that we were given with new sites added in the August 9th recommended sites inventory. So I honestly don't want to look at them unless we can see them all. So
well, it sounds like you want an omnibus list of everything that's been considered, essentially. Okay, so Chris, why don't you speak, since Councilmember Moore was asking you specifically about the pipeline units and what kind of advisement and guidance we have from HCD at this time.
Yeah, we've known all along from HCD's guidance that we're going to need to establish that the pipeline units can be built within the 6-cycle planning period, and so there, you have to, be able to demonstrate that through evidence and through policies that support the development of those pipeline units. And so we've definitely been aware of that all along. I think some of the comment letters you're starting to see come back, including the San Francisco letter that several commenters alluded to, are really helpful for us in the sense that they provide a good roadmap for some of the options that we have available to us for making sure that those pipeline units can be part of our inventory. So I see that as an opportunity to make sure that we get it right.
And Chris, from what you've seen so far of it, is that consistent with your description of how pipeline units are to be treated, that the consideration is going to end up being whether they can be built within the relevant cycle?
Yeah, so that is what the statement is in HCD guidance, is that I believe it's that the units can, and I'm going from memory, that the units can be built within the cycle. It's not obviously that they will be built because the city doesn't ultimately have control over that. And what the message that's coming from some of the comments that other jurisdictions have received is that you need to provide evidence that supports that, and in some cases policies that support that. And in the case of San Francisco as well, these other jurisdictions, it's not that HCD rejected these pipeline units. They were asking for more information if they're going to be included as housing element sites to satisfy the RENA. And so we're certainly aware of that dynamic, and we'll work towards satisfying those requirements.
Thank you, Chris. It's always good to hear your perspective on this and some cogent analysis. Okay, so let's do this. We do have some sentiments from council and the public expressed. We stand at 1016 right now. I don't think we're going to get appreciably into this list of either 16 or 26, geographic regions. How about we go through some of the public commentary this time? There are specific sites that have been discussed, and so maybe what we can do is try to get some of these. Since these are members of the public that that felt strongly enough to sit through the meeting and express their concerns about specific issues or particular sites, why don't we ask our staff, outside consultant, city attorney, to speak to some of these, and then perhaps in the process of that we'll be able to get out a few more of the additional concerns that we can be following up with on August 30th as well. So it does look like August 30th is the date for the continuation of this item. Diane, does that comport with what you were hearing as well? And I think you had said that staff is available at that time too?
Yes, staff and the consultant are both available at that time. So if it works for council, it sounds like we have a date set.
Okay, great. And if that's amenable to people at this time, what I would suggest, since we do have a couple of consent calendar items as well, perhaps we can get to the follow-ons on public comment, and then also get to items 12 and 17. That's what I would suggest at this time. I'm getting a skeptical look. This is just my interpretation from my left. A hand raised from Vice Mayor Chow. I'll refer to my Zoom indicators, pretty poker-faced. But Vice Mayor Chow, do you have any input on that suggested course of action here?
I have some input on the schedule, but then I also have a follow-up question on the pipeline units. I wish I could
please.
ask.
Yeah, ask your follow-up on the pipeline units. It's actually quite an important topic of conversation.
So it's good to know that there are policies that's possible to increase the chance pipeline units could be built. Those we have approved and given a 10-year. So what are those policies we might consider implement? If you could provide us some information either now or email us later, that would be great.
Yeah, excuse me. So I can certainly provide a summary of some of the comments that San Francisco and a few other jurisdictions have received that will get, and it's a menu of policies. It's not prescriptive, but as you'd expect, they are things that are intended to make the development of housing easier or faster. So they could be streamlining, they could be providing support for developers that are seeking access to funds for affordable housing. Those are just a couple of examples that come to mind. I don't have the letter in front of me right now, but those were several things that I believe were cited. So, but so there's a list of there's a menu of things that the city could choose from.
Another question you could help clarify is, I heard if the property owner did not show interest to develop a site, we should not include that. Is that affirmative for all cases, or it's just likely HCD they will ask for more information kind of thing? So I want to
my understanding is that owner interest is just one factor that HCD will consider among many in deciding the development potential of the site.
So it's not like if there is no owner interest, they will definitely not allow a site.
That's not my understanding of the way it works. It's certainly having owner interest helps, and for all of the sites, we have to show a realistic development capacity in the planning period.
And I think one member of the public asked me, how come most of the sites we consider are existing commercial sites that we are adding residential, and we are already losing retail sites? How about office sites? So have we reached out to current properties that's currently zoned only for office to consider possibility of adding residential on top of office?
Yeah, so I'll defer to planning staff sort of on the details of the outreach that's been done, as well as some of the dynamics. I think my understanding, not being a planning professional, is that a lot of that dynamic is just being driven by economic factors, as far as as I'm sure you're aware,
I understand
struggles in retail economics.
I understand property owners might have different economic interests, but then we should do our part to reach out and ask, are you interested in building housing still? Right? That's my intent. And so that's the last of my question, but let me first make my comment about the scheduling, then maybe the planning staff can answer my last question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think if we don't go through the site, I'm concerned one meeting is not sufficient to finish. So it's better if we just identify 2 dates, 2 future dates, maybe like August 30th and maybe September 5th, the Monday after. Or maybe that's
Labor Day, Vice Mayor Chow.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's true. Okay, so I'm concerned we won't get through. So maybe the Tuesday and Thursday that week, or maybe 23rd and 30th.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. It's a reasonable point. Maybe we can go through another round. So Diane, what do you think about 2 days that week? I can say immediately on Thursday, I have a VTA board meeting, so I can't make it in the evening at least. Any thoughts on that?
I think that we need to regroup and see if we can accommodate a second meeting that week.
Okay.
So let me get with staff on that.
And see where we're at. Okay. Yeah.
So that would be, you're looking at, we're on for the 30th.
That's right.
So then you're considering the 1st.
I'm taking the 1st off the table because I actually have a VTA board meeting that night. So,
So were you thinking of 2 sequential evenings, the 30th and the 31st?
Yes, I'm asking about the 31st, the Wednesday, as well as the 2nd, which is the Friday. And I know that Friday evenings are tough to ask for, but given the importance of the topic.
Okay, well, let's let us regroup for a moment, and I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you, Diane. All right, so. And Vice Mayor Chow, did you have anything else at this point? I wanted to do a quick follow-up on yeah, go ahead.
Just the answer about outreach to sites that's zoned only for office.
Right. And I think that Chris would refer that over to Community Development Department to kind of speak to, some of their sentiments there. So, staff, if anyone wants to speak to that, housing essentially over office, our city attorney had mentioned economic factors, please feel free to speak to it if you wanted to raise your hand. Luke, I see your microphone's on. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, the outreach that was done to solicit property interest did not focus just on commercial properties. We started literally with every property that fit the HCD criteria, starting with the half-acre to 10-acre range. And I think that was reflected in our first meetings with the Planning Commission, where we had almost 400 potential properties. So I think it's just the way the list played out and the people who expressed owner interest, it may have skewed that way. And also one of the points that came out of the Planning Commission meetings was to avoid displacing residents through redevelopment of properties. So for instance, apartment sites that might be mid-range density, if it was going to displace residents, there was an interest in not doing that. So that also may have contributed to more commercial properties being on the current list. But it wasn't an intent to just target commercial properties.
Okay, yeah, I see. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised. Did you want to follow on? I actually did have a question that I wanted to ask and follow on to some of the public comments. So a number of people spoke to a particular site at Linda Vista, and that was by the owner, which is good to hear that participation. And the owner, himself was saying that, hey, I don't really want 30 dwelling units per acre. It would be much more appropriate for my site to have 20. So how are we dealing with that? I guess there's a collateral question there as to how these particular minimum dwelling units per acre densities were assigned and have been assigned over time over the course of this project. Pew, you have your hand up. Welcome. Did you want to speak to this question?
Yes, I did. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you very much. With regard to the site at Linda Vista, staff had originally, I believe, gone in with the lower density. However, the Planning Commission had seen fit to consider the site on the west side of Cupertino, and as a result, they wanted to increase the density. We had recommended 25 dwelling units to the acre, which is kind of closer to what the property owner actually identified, saying townhomes are within the range of 18 to 24 in their email. However, Planning Commission saw it fit to be increased to 30 dwelling units to the acre.
I see.
Mayor, I would also note that that if we were to want to use the site for very low or low-income housing, there would be barriers to doing so with a dwelling unit of less than 30 units per acre. The site still could be available for moderate income housing at a lower density, but 30 dwelling units per acre is the minimum for Cupertino as a jurisdiction for low and very low income housing.
Right, for conferring that assumption of
assumption of suitability for
right.
Correct.
Right. Okay, I see. Okay, so just to clarify, the call is ultimately going to be on council as to whether we set that at 20 dwelling units per acre or 30 or some other minimum number, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And not to, belabor the point, but if we set a lower minimum, that doesn't prevent that, greater density from occurring in the future. We're just not necessarily going to get the credit for something like low income or very low income from the outset at this point.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You wouldn't get the credit for very low and low income, and generally, the RENA, you would go by the minimum density is one way to satisfy the RENA. It's
Right.
the simplest way to satisfy the RENA.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And Pew, did you have something else that you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I did want to say that at the 25 dwelling units per acre, that would be ownership units. And so even our BMR program would only be geared towards moderate and median income levels, as opposed to if it were a rental project, the BMR units would be geared for very low or low income.
Right, but not at 25 dwelling units per acre.
Not at
It would have to
25,
be
that
on
is at the
30.
higher density range. Yes, I did want to point that out.
Right, understood. Okay, Councilmember Moore.
Okay, I think that one property would need a few minutes of discussion. So I thought that the policy regarding no displacement was kind of interesting because we do have some 1970s and earlier vintage apartment buildings, which some of them do not have any BMRs to my knowledge, and if they were to be rebuilt, they would need to comply with our REACH codes and be more energy efficient. They could be at a higher density, and we would then be implementing the BMR percentage requirement where for some of these units at $3,000 per month or $3,800 per month, they are not affordable to lower incomes. So I think we should have some discussion about no displacement because there may be some apartment complex owners who are interested in providing the BMRs in their project and increasing the density going down the road. And I'm very concerned about the removal of retail. When I'm looking at the land use designations that we have, it seems like to speak to the Vice Mayor's questions, it seemed like all of them have a residential component to them, and perhaps Pew could talk about that, how it is that when did this happen that our land use designations had that residential addition placed into it. And my concern is that I don't know, for people who are not very familiar with Cupertino, a lot of our commercial areas actually are in like San Jose, for instance, Home Depot. People think it's in Cupertino, but it's not. So we don't have a home improvement center here. We don't have an auto row. There's some missing components that we have, and we are still waiting on the results of the CDTFA audit, which could have some significant impacts to us. So I think we really need to be cautious about removing retail, and while I've been interested in the Crossroads area and the 10-acre site, I'm very concerned for what could happen because that is a very vibrant, and it has been modernized and updated for a retail area, and it's quite popular. So losing that would be quite a significant impact. So anyway, I was looking for an answer on the residential components that we seem to have in most all of our commercial and office areas.
I could speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please, Pew. Go ahead.
So I believe that is a remnant left over from our third housing element cycle, which was in the early 90s. Cupertino had a RENA of around 3,300 units, I believe, back then. Or 3,900, I can't remember off the top of my head. But one of the strategies that was employed at that time was to add the residential designation across large swaths of the city in order to meet that RENA number. However, that was done at the general plan level and not necessarily everywhere at the zoning level, because the cities could still control zoning. And so, however, due to changes in state law since, there's now a residential ability on every site that has the residential designation at the general plan level. that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak to any follow-ons at this time?
Yeah, I want to get more clarification on the minimum of 0.5 acre site. So all the sites we hear that only 0.5 acre above and 10 acre below are considered because HCD. So what exactly is the guidance from HCD? Because when I read their memo, they did not really say it will, just like the previous answer you said, it's absolute. It's just they consider, maybe you can be more accurate.
Right, yeah, so sites between 0.5 and 10 acres are presumptively suitable for development of lower income housing. Smaller or larger sites are considered challenging, and so there's a higher level of proof, of more information that the city would need to provide to include those sites. That said, I believe there are some smaller sites on the inventory that's been presented to you, so it's not a hard and fast rule. But generally, I believe EMC and planning has focused on sites that are presumptively suitable for lower income housing, and the number of units that are generated from very small sites is, it takes a lot of those to add up to get close to the target we need to meet.
And we do need also moderate level income housing.
That's correct.
Right,
yes.
and we have a deficiency on that. So those smaller sites could still produce moderate income housing.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah. And then regarding the density, by the way, so next time when it comes back, I hope another information we help provide is the visual. I think Councilmember Willie mentioned the visual for density, like 20 units per acre, what that looks like. 30 units per acre, what that looks like, have picture of a real building. This is a question residents tend to always ask. And I think we had prepared some of those images for a survey we did in 2021. So if that information can be provided, again, that will help residents to visualize what those look like. And then then if we can get written information more clearly, okay, for Cupertino, 30 units per acre is required in order to count the sites for low and very low. Then we know that we also need sites for moderate income. Then how many number of units per acre a site could be counted as moderate income? Those kind of information, if we can have a table, that would be really helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. All right. I thought it escapes me right now. I lost it on your last point, which is a good one, with regard to the request for additional information in table format. So okay. Right now we're looking at a map. We're kind of defaulting east to west. So Andy, that list of 16 sites that you had, can you remind us why was it not the 26 sites over the course of the entirety of the city, or was that just kind of like the preliminary sites that you're looking at this evening?
We have some sites. We have some areas where there are no sites recommended.
I got it.
Yeah, and we have those listed on the website.
I see.
As well.
And so in your list of 16, you were looking at it still in alphabetical order. Was that right? Because I think Creston started out first and Valco's last, or was I not?
No.
Okay.
No,
so
not
east to west.
Yeah, not exactly.
Okay, got it. Okay. Let's do this. Let me check in with Diane. Diane, it occurs to me that August 30th is actually Pamela Wu's second day as city manager. Maybe it would make some sense to check in with her as to the follow-on day at this point. So I think we're safe kind of, figuring out August 30th. But on your preliminary look into it, Diane, is there any particular one, just so we can kind of have an expectation, Wednesday or Friday?
It looks like there isn't another day that week that will work, so we'll be pushed into the following week.
Okay. All right. So there's no way to have the first day the prior week. Is that a possibility?
The first day of the prior week, meaning?
Well, okay. So turning August 30th into our second day and having possibly, say, something on the week of August 20th, basically next week. So.
And we don't think we can pull together what council's looking for by next week.
Okay. But we wouldn't be able to follow on September 6th. Is that correct? Or is
So September 6th, our consultant is not available, but we can find another day that week, most likely that would work. Oh, but you're out of town.
No, we have the League of California Cities down in Long Beach.
Right, so then the rest of that week doesn't work for council because you're out of town at a conference. And so then it would push our second date to the week of September 12th.
Right, assuming that we take an extra meeting, I guess, on the week of September 12th.
So I think we shouldn't try to set that date in this meeting, perhaps, but let us regroup and see how the meeting goes on the 30th. And perhaps as a standalone item on the 30th, we can perhaps get through this. And we could start earlier on the 30th too.
That's my thought as well, Diane. Yeah, I mean, if we could, I don't know how early it would take. I know that there's public pushback sometimes when we start a little bit too early because of availability of people, given work schedules. But maybe we could try as early as 4 o'clock. No, there's okay. So work schedules. 5 o'clock, maybe, kind of into the typical workday, and see where that takes us, especially if we're focused exclusively on this particular item. So Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's, kind of put this into a continuation to our special meeting on August 30th at this point. But we do have a lot of thoughts kind of, going about. I'm hesitant to start with our first site at this time. Once we have, the follow-ons delivered, I think that we probably will have a much more effective discussion, given our, what looks like 7-hour allocation on the 30th. Okay. Okay, Vice Mayor.
If I could.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
I think 2 separate meetings are different from just one longer meeting, because separate meetings, we receive some information, we receive some comments, we can then digest, think about, and then we can also ask for more information, then come back, and then we have more clear head the next meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
no, that's
so
fair.
I think it's
that's fair.
different.
Let me ask this of either our outside consultant or staff or anyone who could speak to it. If we're looking at the week of September 12th as having the potential follow-up meeting, how's that looking with regard to our timeline? That's roughly a month out from now. I know from an optimistic perspective, we're looking at possibly getting right around that time if you have an EIR, an environmental impact review, CEQA process initiated relatively soon after we consider these housing sites. And it might have taken us, fairly close to what the extended deadline would be in the spring. Are we essentially looking at another, 3 or 4 weeks out from, what our initial estimate of completion is at this point? So it's not like we delay a month, we're going to be looking at another 2 or 3 month delay, right? It's just kind of 1 for 1 at this time. Is that pretty fair?
If I may.
Yes, please, Andy, please go ahead.
Thank you. The tightest turnaround we can have for an EIR would be 9 months. We're going to try for faster, but it's typically 1 year. So that would in effect mean that three weeks further out. Of course, once we're delivered that ball, we'll pick it up and run with it. Our team is ready to move quickly.
Okay, sounds good. So 9 months out from September is sometime in June, if I'm doing the calculation correct. Yes, Vice Mayor Chow.
Just wondering, I mean, I say 2 days, but then I suppose the second day the staff shouldn't need too much preparation. It's just for us to digest. So if we can do like 29th and 30th of August or 30th and 31st of August, that would still work if it works out for the staff.
Well, the 31st has already been ruled out, and Diana has
Oh.
already said that the other days are just not available with regard to
How about 29 and 30th?
the Monday and the Tuesday.
Yeah.
I don't know about the Monday, but I could take a quick look at my own calendar here. I guess we would have to try to figure out if other people are available. I'm actually available on the 29th on Monday. Is that something that we can possibly entertain? I'll look off to, what's that, Councilmember Moore? Sorry, once again?
Do we have staff available for that?
No, that's a fair question, but I'll ask staff. How's your?
It's fine. This works.
Okay. Well, Diane, not to.
It does look like the 29th and the 30th might work.
Okay.
I'm doing 2 back-to-back meetings.
Right. Well, it would just be back-to-back meeting, right? Councilmember Willie, would that Monday work for your schedule? The 29th of August?
I'll make it work. I think the one positive about that is, we will have that time, like Vice Mayor said, to evaluate, but at least it won't be such a long period of time that we'll need to revisit a few of the things. They were the previous night.
Right.
So I could see it as being a benefit.
Okay, Councilmember Way, how's your schedule looking on the 29th?
I will make it work. I'll move something away.
Okay, great. So I guess the only element that's not present right now is our new city manager, which, I think in an effort to be considerate of the schedule, instead of kind of holding in abeyance a future date from the 30th, we've actually taken the date of her starting time. And so I guess we'll all, including the public, get to know, Pamela quite directly for those first couple of days, assuming that works out. So I'll place that caveat on it and then move forward with that. So I do have actually 3 hands raised from Vice Mayor Chow, Councilmember Way, and Councilmember Willie at this point. So that's artifactual from the Vice Mayor. Councilmember Way, did you want to speak before we move on to the consent calendar items?
Okay, yeah, very briefly. I just feel that now we have this cleared. So if we receive the agenda item, we have any suggestions, we should give the staff. And so that, we have 2 days now, we can work it out. I know we want to take our time, but it'd be nice if we can finish in 2 days. So let's really work on with our agenda and make sure that what we want, the staff knows ahead of time.
Yeah, no, I think we actually got some pretty decent substance today. So fair points. Councilmember Willie, I hear you making noises, Vice Mayor Chow, so I'll go ahead and call on you after Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, the one thing I would toss out, I hear we're talking about our new city manager and implications there, but being that it's going to be her first day and stuff, I would tend to think that, if our assistant city manager, if Diane is able to carry the football and let the city manager, kind of unpack in her office. And if she were to zoom in for, periods, fine. But the real focus is the football's being carried by our assistant city manager. She knows who on staff is doing what, who can do what questions, and so on and so forth. So I would tend to think that let's keep this team that we've already got established and let this new city manager enter the picture peacefully.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any intention not to, have a seamless transition. So thanks for the, thanks for the thought, Councilmember Willie. Vice Mayor Chow, and
it would be helpful if the presentation could be made available maybe Friday afternoon, then we could go over that. Yeah.
No, I think that's fair. You know, a lot of times in jurisdictions, they'll have a deadline for presentations that are, you know, so typically we have them, you know, I guess given the fact that we have about a weekend, 3 days at this time, let's just consider that a standing request. If we can have that presentation by the end of the working week prior to that Monday, that would be much appreciated, so that we could, you know, get situated. And you know, I think it's also fair just to say, to the extent that any supplements to the staff report, you know, go out, just make sure that everyone reads that. But at the same time, you know, the presentation is often really kind of pointing out key points, and you know, you're also adjusting in real time, and I completely appreciate that. You know, because a lot of times you'll get that kind of last minute, last day, you know, sort of input from the public that makes you go, okay, you know, I have my template done, but I'm going to go ahead and adjust this and that point. But let's just be prepared to, you know, provide a cohesive, overarching summary of where we're at, get everyone properly contextualized, and we'll just move forward with the good bulk of the work at that point. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and move us back to agenda item number 12. We stand at 10:48. I think we have taken you know, a break previously, but let's go ahead and take another break until 10:55. Hopefully we can get through items number 12 and 19. They are, to remind everyone, respectively, the Climate Action Plan 2.0, as well as the Cupertino Poet Laureate for the upcoming term. So we'll see you back here at 10:55 in approximately 6 to 7 minutes. Thanks. We're back onto our agenda. We pulled items 12 and 19. We have concluded through, I'm sorry, what was that? It was 12 and 17. We pulled items 12 and 17 from the consent calendar. We got through item 24 and have continued that to August 29th, I believe, subject to the approval, essentially, of our new city manager on that day. And so we're going to go to item 12 on our agenda. Item 12 relates to the second iteration of our climate action plan. And so I believe that should be Andre DeVort that is providing that presentation. Andre, welcome. Thank you for all of the hard work on this critically important aspect of Cupertino's contribution to making sure that the climate crisis is hopefully appropriately addressed on a wide scale. But thank you very much again for your work on this. And so let's go ahead and take away the presentation here.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I'm joined today by Kelsey Bennett with our consulting team, Rincon Consultants, in case there's any questions she can help address. I do have a very quick presentation, and I'll launch into that right now. Okay, so the Climate Action Plan 2.0, one of the main purposes of the Climate Action Plan is to show how the city of Cupertino plans to align itself or to go beyond the state greenhouse gas reduction targets. That is SB 32 and the executive order for carbon neutrality at the state level and various other regulations and guidelines around greenhouse gas reduction plans. This update to the Climate Action Plan aims to establish new systems that are resilient and equitable that will allow for a transition to carbon neutrality in the future. The measures and actions that support this goal include the electrification of building and transportation systems, an increased shift to active and public shared transportation, continued usage of carbon neutral electricity, water use efficiency, waste reduction, and diversion. We also included an analysis and goals around climate adaptation. As these current measures and actions are implemented, the city will gain more information, new technologies will emerge, and the current pilot projects and programs will scale to the size needed to reach a carbon neutral city. So this is a very ambitious plan, and I just want to say thanks to the City Council and all the members of the public that have been involved so far. So just a quick reminder of the history of the process. In the public engagement process, we've summarized the public engagement results in an appendix, which is in the agenda packet today. Throughout the process, we've had a number of checkpoints with the Sustainability Commission, the City Council, and a lot of one-on-one contact with residents, business owners, and stakeholders in the community. And that culminated in June with a City Council study session. Just a reminder of the public engagement, we saw about 82% of our last poll respondents were happy or very happy with the direction of this published CAP 2.0. This is included in the CAP 2.0 initial study and negative declaration, but I just wanted to highlight a little bit more of the context around climate action in cities. Really, we're talking about implementing a policy in the general plan, environment and sustainability element. Also, we had a significant milestone and commitments in 2018 when the City Council approved a climate emergency declaration, which really guides our policy directions to act with utmost urgency relative to the latest climate science and really trying to accelerate our action in this space. We did achieve our greenhouse gas reduction targets from our previous climate action plan. That's what really kicked off the process here of the CAP 2.0. In 2019, the state set some new guidelines around carbon neutrality, which is really what was a guiding principle here around the CAP 2.0. And just in April of 2022, the Air District has begun updating regional greenhouse gas reduction thresholds, which we can answer questions about as well. And I do want to say that this is a very historic day today. As you may have heard, the federal government just approved the largest climate bill that has ever been approved at the federal level. The Biden administration was successful in about a $350 billion spending package for climate action that's going to affect adoption of clean technologies, electric vehicles, and that sort of thing. So this is a very exciting and historic day. I'm very happy to be here with you. Again, just looking back at the original goal-setting proposal, this came from the November 2020 Sustainability Commission recommendation to achieve the following goals with the CAP 2.0 update. And the really relevant goals here that we have followed in the creation of this plan is to reduce community-wide emissions by 50% by the year 2030. That's according to a 2010 baseline. Achieve carbon neutrality 5 years earlier than the state target of 2045. Establish a zero waste community target date of 2035. And we also discussed a guiding vision for the process of the update of equity, innovation, urgency, resilience, and adaptation. So this is in a nutshell what the plan proposes. All of the actions and measures combined into this waterfall chart show you the relative magnitude of effort that the city of Cupertino will need to take to achieve these goals. As you can see, the red bars are really where the actions and measures are going to guide us in the next 10 years as we look towards the year 2030 and the year 2040. And as you can see at the end of the year 2040, we still will have some emissions remaining. So really this is a path towards carbon neutrality. We do anticipate that, again, technologies will change, policy innovations will come that will get us to a carbon neutral city by 2040. The pillars of action I thought would be important to address at this time, given some of the comments we received at the study session and from members of the public. Just in broad strokes, what are these actions proposing and what are the pillars of action? The bulk of the CAP 2.0 document, you'll notice, is actions categorized into these various measures and pillars. The project team believes that for a sustainability plan to be effective, that under each of the broad measures that is proposed, that we should select actions that hit at least each of these pillars. And the pillars being structural change, studies and plans. We need to find funding for these things, equity, engagement, and partnerships. So you notice the organization of the plan under each measure, the various proposed actions are organized into these various pillars. So in June 21st, the council reviewed the public review draft CAP 2.0. The council members asked clarifying questions and provided feedback on the draft plan. A memorandum was circulated to the council members in July of 22, addressing the questions and concerns, which is also attached to the agenda packet today. The attachment to the packet gives much more detailed responses to the council members' comments. And of course, myself and Kelsey are here to elaborate it any further. In particular, there was concern and questions around the public transit goals, and the project team conducted a quick analysis to give the council additional options if you wish to look at the public transit targets. And just a summary of those targets is, a summary of those options is to leave the goal as is, reduce to a less aggressive public transit target, and increase our ambition in the electric vehicle adoption rate, and to reduce the overall, the third option would be to reduce the overall greenhouse gas emission target for the CAP itself. So those options are also elaborated in the staff report in your packet. There's also a request for more information about what it means for the plan to be CEQA qualified. And if the council desires, I can ask our consultant Kelsey to elaborate on that feature of the plan and how it relates to the general plan. I thought a flow chart would be helpful. A lot of the questions we received in the study session and from the public, I thought needed a little more clarification about how a climate action plan is implemented in practice. So I thought that this would, I worked this up, it's very rough, but I thought an illustration would be helpful just to examine a little bit about how climate action plans are done. And once they're adopted, how do they get put into place? Because it is a very big plan, it's a long-term plan. I want to emphasize that the actual implementation of the climate action plan happens through the normal budgetary and work program planning process. Also recall one of our original vision statements for this process. We do want this plan to be flexible and adaptable. As you saw, that we don't exactly know all the technologies and means that we'll need to get to carbon neutrality by the year 2040. However, what we think we've set in place here is a plan that does allow this reconsideration, especially in the near-term planning cycles, to take a look at what's happening today, adjust the actions as necessary, and use a very robust monitoring and reassessment program to take a look at what's happening. For example, the California state budget often will inject funds into climate action and various grant programs. And who knows how swiftly this federal money is going to start coming, but we do want to have a very robust plan in place to react and apply for these grants. So monitoring and reassessment phase is a critical part. Just to walk you through real quick on the flow chart, the general plan and environment and sustainability element starts the process by asking the city to create a climate action plan, and it gives some very broad strategic guidance on what to include in the CAP. The CAP 2.0 here is what we're talking about today. This is really the greenhouse gas reduction plan as is directed by the general plan. It's a little bit more specific in strategic targets and sectors. It does include that greenhouse gas inventory analysis that you see in the document. And that data really guides what focus areas, what levels of effort we think that the city should take over the course of the plan period, which is until the year 2030. And again, I mentioned the measures, actions, and the key pillars. From there's two different ways that the climate action plan actually gets implemented. One, as I mentioned, is the CEQA component. This is a CEQA qualified climate action plan, which means that it offers additional tools and options for the city to review new projects and new plans in the future, and make sure that those are aligned with this CAP and the greenhouse gas reduction ambitions. And splitting off here to the bottom is what I referred to as our near-term action planning. We need to assess our staff capacity. We need to create work program proposals. And a good example of that is a work program proposal that we're embarking on very shortly here, which is our building electrification strategy. So you can see how we're getting much more specific all the way until we're looking at a specific policy. For example, a policy to update the building code. In those specific policies, it works like your normal policy development process where there's a budget request, maybe it gets on the work program, there's community engagement, specific analysis on cost and benefit, and commission and council input. So I hope this clarifies sort of the flow of how climate actions are taken.
Yeah, that's a great flow chart.
Thank you. So next steps, upon adoption of the Climate Action Plan 2.0, we want to hear your comments and feedback today. Once the plan is adopted, we file CEQA documentation with the State Clearinghouse in the County of Santa Clara. We are also have engaged Rincon consultants to create those greenhouse gas CEQA analysis tools for the benefit of the city. That takes place after the adoption of the plan. I mentioned the work program item around building electrification is going to kick off very soon here. And then looking forward to future fiscal years, we'll be taking actions and proposals to the City Council and the Sustainability Commission for that's really where the rubber meets the road. So in summary, this is the recommended action from the staff report, and really happy to engage with you and any more questions and comments you may have.
Thank you very much, Andre. Much appreciated. Let's go to our members of the public that would like to comment on this item. We have one hand raised, Shani Kleinhaus in Zoom. Now we have Dashiell Leeds. And per our regular practice, we'll go ahead and offer the ability to raise your hand or fill out a blue card or email the city clerk at cityclerk@cupertino.org while Shani is speaking in order to be recognized for public comment here. And so, Shani, you'll have 3 minutes, as with all the other speakers. Welcome, and please begin.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and council member. My name is Shani Kleinhaus. I'm the environmental advocate for Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. Our mission is to promote the enjoyment, understanding, and protection of birds and other nature, and engaging people of all ages in birding, education, and conservation. We're located in McClellan Ranch and have been located in Cupertino for over 20 years. And we support Cupertino's efforts to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. We believe that restoring and protecting natural ecosystems and promoting urban ecology are vital to climate resilience and equity that benefits both biodiversity and the well-being of the community. And we see some of these strategies in the CAP 2.0. Earlier today, however, we sent a letter and asked for one small modification to one action in the plan. And I don't know if the clerk can show the language or the slide that Annie Yang sent earlier today. In action CS 2.1, the city looks to study opportunities to create new natural areas in existing open spaces, parkland, and fields with native species, biodiverse ecology, higher carbon sequestration potential, and improved recreational connectivity for the community. And these are laudable goals, and we hope that they become true soon, a reality. But we're concerned about that one last part of this action, that it may lead to recreation infrastructure in sensitive habitats and activities in sensitive habitats, and come at the expense of habitat connectivity and sensitive wildlife species. And so we asked if you can change that 3 letters there, improved recreational connectivity, with ecologically responsible recreation opportunities for the community. You have the language in front of you, and hopefully you will be willing to consider this. And thank you so much for the consideration.
Thank you very much, Shani. Our next speaker is Dashiell Leeds. Madam City Clerk, are there any further speakers that have been arrived over at blue cards or email?
No, Mayor.
Okay, well, Dashiell, you'll be our next and final speaker on this item. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Tashel Leeds. I'm the conservation organizer for the Sierra Club Lumber Prieta chapter. I think we had some young folks from Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action who are interested in tracking this item, but I think it's pretty late at night. The Sierra Club strongly supports the adoption of Cupertino's Climate Action Plan 2.0 update tonight. Thank you to all the staff and consultants who have worked so hard on this plan. A special shout out to the city project team of Andre, Gilly, Karen, and Victoria. And thank you to everyone from the community who engaged to make this plan more aggressive, and to all the elected officials who made this plan more aggressive. The emissions reduction targets tonight in this cap are necessary and prescient, given that the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law today, as Andre had mentioned. In adopting this climate action plan tonight, Cupertino will position itself well for future opportunities. We hope you adopt the staff recommendation, option 1, which preserves the plan's bold and necessary transportation goals. We ask you not to water down this climate action plan in any way tonight and to pass. I'd also like to support Shanice's comments. I think the inclusion of ecologically responsible recreation language in item CS 2.1 would be a good inclusion. So thank you so much. Really looking forward to the implementation of these strong cap measures. And thanks so much to everyone who worked on this.
Thank you, Dashel. And we'll go ahead and take this back up to council for any follow-on questions or comments. Do we have such questions or comments from the council? If not, I'll go ahead and ask someone to move the recommended action, or one of the recommended actions, or a modification. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand up, and I do see a hand up from Vice Mayor Chow as well. So why don't we start with Councilmember Moore?
Okay, so I would be interested in moving the recommended action option 1 with the edit provided from Shawnee Kleinhaus, and that was regarding, I believe it was CS 2.1, and the clerk has that language.
Okay, yeah, I looked for the email, I couldn't find it, so I was able to find strike improved recreations connectivity, or maybe it was recreational connectivity with ecologically responsible, and I didn't catch the other two words.
I have the screenshot.
Okay, great. Yeah, ecologically responsible recreation opportunities. Recreational connectivity, yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's the motion of Councilmember Moore. Would anyone like to second that?
Second.
Vice Mayor Chow seconds. Okay. And Councilmember Moore, did you have any comment before we go to Vice Mayor Chow? Did you want to discuss Vice Mayor Chow?
I have some addition I would like to make.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah. So let me find. Maybe I'll just use my screenshot. Okay. Let me share. So I would like to get some feedback from my fellow council members. TR 4.4 is asking to develop a plan to limit parking for housing, so that there will to build housing without off-street parking if the location is close to frequent transit service to be implemented at a time when frequent transit options are more available. So there are just TR 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 are trying to limit parking, but we have heard over many meetings from residents that parking in Cupertino is essential for a lot of people, seniors, families with kids, and the transit options are not available. And since we are moving to electric cars mostly, so limiting parking really does not reduce greenhouse emission, and it might even create more people driving around with gasoline cars. So I wonder if these three policies do not seem to be aligned with the positions Cupertino have taken in the past in our legislative review committee also. So I wonder what the other council members think about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow, for those comments. And for reference, I believe TR 4.4 and 4.5 and your other referenced items can be found
Page 92 of the PDF.
right, 92 of the PDF, and then actually, well, TR5 is 92, and then in the overall packet, at approximately page 215 is where the TRs begin. So any feedback on this, Councilmember Moore, as the original movant, perhaps we could start with you as to what your sense on these comments on the transit connectivity aspects are.
Okay, the first one, let's see, develop a plan and timeline. It to me, the language, because it says to be implemented at a time when frequent transit options are more available in Cupertino. I look at this as something that's aspirational and with an expectation that there was going to be improved transit for that to happen. And that's the same with the next one, TR 4.5. It says it would be you would conduct a traffic pattern study, and this to me is simply a study to severely limit or eliminate parking for single passenger, specifically gasoline and diesel vehicles. So considering that this is looking at greenhouse gases, that makes sense to me. I think it might be challenging to do this in practice. How are you going to eliminate parking for a single passenger gasoline vehicle and not for an electric or other alternative fuel vehicle? I think that might be a challenge, but it's regarding having a study. And let's see. And again, the next 4.6 is having a study. So I don't see these as cast in stone actions. So I'm not particularly worried about them. I think in the end, we do want to see quality public transit provided that has a lower or no emissions. So I understand the direction that they're going here, but and I'm not concerned about what they're providing. I think it's moving in the right direction, and we do need to study what we can do in order to improve our transit situation.
Hey, thank you, Councilmember Moore. And Vice Mayor Chow, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, great. I think that makes a lot of good sense as well. So, Councilmember Way, your hand is raised.
Actually, I just want to say I totally agree with Councilmember Moore's statements.
Yeah. Okay. I think that gives us some good consensus. And so, well, let me just extend our thanks again to staff and our members of the public for expressing your support. It's always easy in Cupertino to support environmental measures, and I think it's a real testimonial to the quality of our community's thinking on this issue, that we have such wonderful staff and support to put together things like the Climate Action Plan 2.0 with a lot of thoughtful detail, but also couched in manners that don't necessarily trigger particular sensitivities in the here and now. They're very forward-thinking, but at the same time, they become definitive over time when you look at something like the flow chart that Andre was showing us as to how you really are considering the various parts of change, science, legislation in the future. So it's nice to see that kind of sector being approached in a stepwise manner that's really quite how to put it, quite sufficient, and I apologize for the understatement there in meeting the standards of our community. So thanks again. Councilmember Woolley, did you want to make a comment before we vote on this item?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's probably good. Andre, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the good work. I mean, climate change, it's having some pretty significant, devastating effects. I see that trying to get to the carbon neutral is truly something that we've got to do. I tend to have a more open perspective, I think, and that is I see that many different pieces of the puzzle are going to play in the transit. Yes, that's a piece of it, but so are EVs, and I think we're going to be adopting more and more EVs. I think the article that I read possibly yesterday or this weekend, where the new Biden package includes, funding to promote EV vehicles. And so, well, there we go, moving away from the fossil fuel gas engines to other modes of getting around. And so I think there is going to still be a strong need for personal transportation, and there'll be hopefully EVs to fill that spot. So yeah, reduce the parking, try and move more people into public transportation, but I think we'll still have many different pieces that need to come together to get us where we need to be. So I'll leave it at that. I want to move forward with this, and so I definitely support it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilmember Woolley and Vice Mayor Chow. Before I call on you, I do see we have an outside consultant here. Kelsey, did you want to speak to any of the items you've heard? I take it that the tenor of the conversation is going fairly positively with regard to the work that's been done, but I want to give you the opportunity, at least to, say hello to our community since you've been here through the evening. Any points that you'd like to follow on?
I just wanted to commend the council and the community for going with more aggressive targets than the state level targets, and being involved in the engagement process and being willing to work over the past few months on all these different cap measures. And as somebody who works on both sustainability and CEQA documents, glad that your community is going to be able to benefit, and your staff for future development projects will be able to benefit from the streamlining availability for CEQA GHG emissions analyses as well. And it's good considering the new BAQMD thresholds that you are adopting the cap and adopting your own CEQA GHG thresholds, because that will also make your lives easier as well moving forward. And just to thank Sierra Club and everyone else who had comments and made it an even better cap.
Of course, wonderful. And is Cupertino pretty much at the cutting edge of the jurisdictions that you've been helping out with regard to the climate action plans?
We at Rincon work on, I'd say, a majority of the caps in the Bay Area. And this is definitely a more cutting edge one with better targets than most. A lot of them just kind of go with the basic state level. So you guys are with, establishment of your emergency resolution and your more aggressive targets, you are, I'd say, a little bit more above the average ball game here in the Bay Area, which, I, again, commend the community for as well. And just wanted to echo what Andre's, I think it's really great that the cap will be considered by the council today on the same day that historic federal climate legislation was also passed. So yes. I think it's a good lucky day all around for climate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kelsey. Really appreciate it. And we know that you can see best practices throughout the jurisdictions that you serve. And I'm very proud of Cupertino for being able to pull in all these various resources and have the excellent staff it does to be able to get these very stepwise and meticulously thought out plans going forward. And I think we do set the standard in a lot of ways, but if there are ways that we can be learning from our fellow jurisdictions as well, it's great to have a resource such as yourself that has the various input points and the interactions with the other jurisdictions that we can also be learning from. So thanks a lot for all that you do. And I'll go on to Vice Mayor Chow to provide some more commentary prior to a vote. All right, Vice Mayor Chow.
So, thank you for this really well thought out plan. I think it's kind of like the parking policies. It's really considerate, trying to reach, but then doesn't overreach. And like the electrification, also we are trying to make that goal, but then along the way, there are thoughtful policies to try and push for that. And then I like that the plan also has urban forest management plan, because climate action is also about creating that greenery that really bring us better air. And I like that there is biodiversity, and then I really appreciate Shani's comment about making sure that we preserve the ecological resources. So there's just a lot of good things in the plan. So really appreciate the staff for taking so much time and going through. We had multiple study sessions, and this is really a great plan. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to work on, truly. And I would say, encapsulating it's sort of the difference between solutions and something that's a very different kind of animal. For solutions, when you're looking at something like a transit plan, you actually look at these types of ways that the language is couched that helps encourage a jurisdiction to reach these and gives them reasonable targets as well as a game plan for moving forward. Whereas with other things that we've seen, it becomes very clear that it's a bit of a beating with a stick, and you come up with these mandates that almost border on I would say bullying, really, but more importantly, it's a matter of efficacy, right? I mean, if you're couching your solutions like this, it becomes a much more palatable runway, right? I mean, we're not thinking about, okay, you're packaging with stuff that is completely unsavory and not vetted particularly well, if at all. So, again, thanks very much. We hope that you stick with us throughout the entire process of making sure that we implement, CAP 2.0. And I know that there are many decades of, lots of work by a number of good people to make sure that we are able to, fight back the, frankly, ills that have been visited upon us over years and years of, less than responsible stewardship. But, this is great. It gives us a lot of cause for optimism for the future. So without further ado, let me go ahead and ask our city clerk to conduct a roll call vote for this motion that's on the table.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And so I'm told that we are on item 17. Let me pull up the agenda just to confirm that. So item 17 indeed was the consideration of the Library Commission's recommendation of Keiko O'Leary for appointment of the new 2023 to 2024 Cupertino Poet Laureate. I don't see a presenter here, but it was on consent, and I do see a few people that are still here from our Parks and Recreation Department or Recreation and Community Services, I think maybe is the, Rochelle, remind me, your department, is it, and I should know this having come from the commission, it's been kind of in flux. Is it now Parks and Recreation Department again, or did we?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So welcome from Parks and Rec. Would you like to give us the summary of this item number 17?
Yeah, so I don't have a presentation for you. And in all honesty, I was not part of this item, and we did have a library commissioner here, but she had to leave. But I will do my best to answer any of your questions.
Okay, well, presumptively, we have a recommendation from Library Commission for Keiko O'Leary for the appointment. I see a couple of hands raised from Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Moore. Let me go ahead and, per our usual practice, go to members of the public. to make sure that we open it up for any potential commentary. I see a few people that are still here on the Zoom function. There's nobody in Community Hall other than us on the dais, but I don't see any hands raised. Madam City Clerk, were there any emails that came in to cityclerk@cupertino.org?
No, Mayor.
No, on this item. Okay, so very well. Let's go back to Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, did you want to comment or question or perhaps bring a motion on the table for consideration?
Okay, well, I think I should probably point out what my concern was with this agenda item.
Okay.
And it's not exactly the recommendation. It's attachment C, the Poet Laureate Playbook, and my request is that it be updated. It is from 2016, and there are sections in it which are no longer current, and I would like to see this. I think it would be the Library Commission, perhaps, that would oversee it, but I think it needs to be updated. There's information about contacts for people in the community. There's information about what different community members, what positions they're holding. So there's a good bit that is obsolete and maybe moving forward does not need to be included in the playbook, because I think you would want it to be a little bit not so set in a specific place and time, as like a handbook maybe shouldn't be. If you've looked at it, I think you'll see some of the notes. I think they might be helpful, but not all of it. So yeah.
So would you like to move the recommended action along with some direction to have the Library Commission look into updating the Poet Laureate Playbook?
Mm-hmm.
So through the mayor, if I could.
Yes, please, Rochelle, Director.
This was an item that was brought with the work program.
Yes.
To update this 86-page document, because it is going to be quite a deal to really work through this, especially because we have found that there are things that we should tighten up with the process altogether.
Yes.
But it definitely didn't make it obviously on the work plan. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we do agree. However, it is going to be quite a project.
Okay, fair enough. And as we sit here in August, we could always add that to the work plan sometime over the course of the next 6 to 7 months for the upcoming fiscal year, starting July 1st, 2023. So let's go ahead and, if that's okay with you, Councilmember Moore, maybe modify that motion that you've placed on the table to make it a referral to staff with regard to selecting timing for bringing forth modifications to the Cupertino Poet Laureate Playbook for consideration by the Library Commission in the future.
Okay, so I accept that modification, and yes, leave it at that.
Okay, great. Would anyone like to second this motion that is on the table? And I'll go by any show of hands. I see Councilmember Willie has a hand raised.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And let us go ahead and take any further hands for discussion or deliberation on this item number 17. I don't see any further hands raised. And so, Madam City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote on this.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And so we are on to the end of our agenda. This is no longer enumerated items. Council and staff comments and future agenda items is where we're at on the headings. Would anyone like to go forward with any future agenda items? But before we do that, let me refer this to staff. Acting City Manager Thompson, do you have any reports that you would like to give in closing, or comments, I should say, in closing prior to the end of the meeting?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Diane. And so let's go ahead, a couple of minutes each for potential future agenda items. And I don't see hands raised from our council. Let me go ahead and give everyone a moment to collect their thoughts in that regard. As people are thinking about it, I did have a follow-on. I think there was a request from Oral Communications. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it wasn't the speaker who was speaking on issues of drought, but maybe it'll occur to me as someone else is talking on the future agenda items. So Councilmember Moore, your hand is raised, followed by Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Moore, why don't you start us off on this one?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So actually, I feel like our agenda has been pretty packed. When they get over 1,000 pages, it puts a good bit of a workload on us to get through. There is, there are agenda items, future agenda items available, which takes a little bit to get to on our website. And I would like in the future for that listing to be put in on this item as an attachment. So if you've seen it before, there's a listing of it. I could probably find it if you give me a moment, but I'd like to see it as an attachment so that we already know what's queuing up, so that we're not either repeating stuff that's already on its way and we know what's coming. I think that would be pretty helpful. So if you're able to pull that future agenda item listing up, I think that would be pretty helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I'll go over that with Diane tomorrow with regard to the status of that document. I think it's, or Diane, if you wanted to speak to it briefly, I think there's an ongoing document that we used to keep as to kind of like the ordering of future agenda items and future meetings.
Yeah, we do have a list of future agenda items that we've recently updated, and we could prepare that to include with the agenda or to provide to council as a separate document in advance of the council meeting.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Diane. And Councilman Moore, did you?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So if you quick search Cupertino items of interest, the first one shows up for 2022, August 11th, and you can find the future agenda items there under attachments.
Okay,
so
great.
we could take a look at those.
Now, when you say quick search, where are you quick searching?
I just went Cupertino items of interest.
I mean, is that on the internet or in your
Google
email inbox? Okay, it's just Google. Okay,
I just
great.
Google searched it, and then you click on items of interest, City of Cupertino, 2022, and not the August 11th date, but the actual attachments.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. That's a good guideline to start with. And so, Vice Mayor Chow, you're next.
Yeah. So yeah, items. There is a web page with all the items of interest. It's a bi-weekly newsletter by the city manager, and it has a future agenda item, but it doesn't have. I think it doesn't capture a lot of things we proposed at the very end. It's just things will be scheduled already. So, as I brought up that the Creekside Farmers Market seems to be facing potential closure too, so I am not sure how to proceed. They are asking which city staff can they reach out to so they can get a resolution like the Memorial Park, but we know that city staff doesn't really have time. And so I'm not sure how to respond.
Yeah, I won't go into the substance of this, but it is something that I've broached with the city manager over email. Very, very recently. I think probably even as late as early this morning. So I'll take that under due consideration, and thank you in extending our brief conversation about that earlier this evening. I think the deliverable probably looks like an item that would perhaps expound or expand upon the subcommittee's work. And I think that actually is quite equitable as well. I shouldn't say more than that. Anything else, Vice Mayor Chow?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, great. And I don't see any new hands raised under future agenda items from either Councilmember Way or Councilmember Woolley. I don't have any myself. Councilmember Moore, did you want to have another follow-up?
Yes. So Vice Mayor and myself, we added on June 21st the study session to review the past partnership and support for the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. It's listed as 22-11184, and we had a bulletized list of information we were looking for. And I know when we had this, it was the $8,000 accounts payable item. When we discussed it before, we had multiple attachments that we were really getting a bit off topic for that agenda item when we were discussing it. So I would like to see this come back, because we've been waiting for a while to have a conversation about it, and thus far we haven't really had an opportunity to do that.
Okay, noted. And I'll go ahead and move on. I don't have any future agenda items to add here. So let us go ahead and move to the next item on our agenda, which I believe is adjournment. Okay, well, we're at 11:46. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great night. And we will see you likely on August 30th for a special meeting, or perhaps August 29th, I should say. And we hope that the rest of your month goes really well. And our next regular meeting, to remind everyone, is going to be on September 6th, the day after Labor Day. And we'll be here at 6:45 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Meeting adjourned.